What is happening out there, rotoscouts baseball fans? Welcome to a Friday afternoon show. Kind of a casual Friday. Looks like I got a little smudge on my face right there. Yeah, I did. How about that? Casual Friday show. Obviously, the makeup girl is off today. Makeup guy, whoever it is, wasn't here today to touch me up, make me look all pretty for the show. Gave them the day off. The whole company's off today. Everybody except me, all the rotoscouts employees, the big swath of employees that we've got working for us. So we've got a Friday slate, 13 gamer, big one to talk about. Lousy contests again on FanDuel. They're really not doing us any favors over there. I'm just playing like one lineup in a couple contests, and that's it. But full go on DK. We'll talk it all through. I do think it's a very interesting slate. Just kind of a bummer that FanDuel's cut the prize pool down to 15K up top and for the main contest. And as Dennis was pointing out in the chat earlier, Dennis who just joined the chat, they made it so that you have to finish in the top 10% to even double up. So, I mean, it's just rough out there. But we'll go through it all. I do think there's good contests, good games to talk about. There's good hitting situations, good pitching situations on this one. So it's kind of a deep slate, kind of interesting. Well, let's say hi to everybody. PoDegen Stoner's here. PoDegen points out 3 more subs till 420. Gonna have a big party for that one. The Hotbox edition of Roto Scouts with special guest Snoop Dogg, Willie Nelson, open tuna fish bar from Terry's favorite bodega. Love it. Aloysius is here. What's up, Aloysius? Could be Travis. And Mr. Forgy. And Jake Swales is here. What's going on, Jake? Anybody doing anything good this weekend? Just football stuff? At some point we'll do a football show, as I've been threatening. They will become more regular than this, I promise. This week's just been lousy overall. Just getting through it this week. But, yeah, projections are up on the site. Football projections went up. Football projections, football positional scoring and value rankings are all up on the site for each position. The groups and stacks article will be up there tomorrow. I'm trying to knock out a show tomorrow, I think. There's a chance I get inspired later on, like 4 hours from now, and just jump on at like 8 o'clock tonight, but I wouldn't promise anything. I wouldn't count on it. Just not feeling it. But we'll get there tomorrow. We'll go through the whole slate. It won't be a huge marathon just because everything's a lot more like in place. There's a lot more just, all right, now I know who the third receiver is going to be, where it might have been a question mark on a lot of teams last week. So just fewer guys overall to talk about. Could be Travis. No, just, the occasional dart there on DK. Travis asked if I play it all on DK. I primarily have just always played on FanDuel. That's where my bankroll is, and just never really moved it across. From time to time, I'll throw in a couple of bucks, especially around like a big, a major in golf or something like that, or like a big NASCAR race if it's during the All-Star break and it's the Daytona or whatever, and they've got a big contest. Like if DK's got a milli for something and FanDuel's just like, I'll give you 50,000 if you win, and if you beat 600,000 people, then I might jump in and throw a little bit of money into DK and just play, kind of stupid casual approach. But I don't have a big pool of money there. I don't max enter over on DK or anything. Jake Swales took down 17th in the relay throw last night with the Rangers over Twins. All right, that works. Nice little $250 night. Beautiful, dude. That's it. Keeps it up. Like you said, build the bankroll. Trey says, sounds like me. I haven't done much. Going to dig in all night tonight and tomorrow. If I did too much early on all week, I overthink and switch it. Yeah, I've been in it. I mean, I obviously I had to build the projection set twice this week because of that stupid data thing that got me on Wednesday. But then just Wednesday, just some stuff in the personal life and just, bogging me down. Woke up yesterday not feeling all that well with the allergies killing me. So it's just been like one thing on top of another this week. But we're good. We'll be all right. And I have been, I've been paying attention. I've got the projections updated and everything's up and running. But yeah, just been a slog this week overall. And just sometimes when it's like, all right, get on, do a second show, it becomes a chore. Matt Pat says Scooble for all the chips. Swift captain was optimal in Showdown last night. Yeah, Swift had a game yesterday for sure. And yeah, where he was priced, that had to have been the winning captain play. That's what we talk about a lot. It's quite frequently those skill players who are a little bit less expensive than the quarterbacks that carry it. Jake Swales likes Webb and Steele for pitching tonight. Both those guys are projected well in my model. I've got Webb is actually the pitcher in my my lone lineup that I entered. I actually made sacrifices to get to the pitcher in Coors Field, I think for the first time ever. Normally you're like, all right, well, I'll take the pitcher in Coors Field because he's cheap and I can get to these bats. Here I was like, oh, shit, I can't roster that combination of bats that I wanted and I can't get to Webb. I was thinking about using David Peterson for $8,000 on that FanDuel slate. But then I figured out a way to get to Webb that I was satisfied with. But yeah, get to the pitcher that's pitching in Coors Field. It's a weird one. Let's get into it. There we are. Fall allergies in full swing, says Greg Biancone. Yeah, it was like I was saying on the show yesterday. Just for whatever reason, when I have a couple of beers and I must just sleep like my mouth just wide open and like the whole world from the air conditioner and whatnot just being inhaled all night long just gets on top of me every time. It's so weird. So start with the run board. It's from a little earlier. Oh shit! I never updated it. Oops. Ignore that. That explains why some of the things were off today. Weird. Anyway, I fixed it in a different way. All right, ignore the run board. That's really strange. I wonder if I accidentally reverted it. Shit, now I'm worried about this file. Hang on, let me just check. As long as the... I don't know how I did that. 414. 414, all right, we're okay. That's really weird. But everything is fine. Bear with me. I don't want to fuck this up. Yeah, everything's in line. It's really weird. I didn't know that it could even do it. It could even do that. Anyway, let's just talk it through. Pitching board. This is what I mean. Like, everything's been just weird and off this week. It's just been shit like that all week long. Anyway, Logan Webb at the top of my pitching board. I like the spot in Colorado. We basically talked about it yesterday. League leader in innings pitched. Typically going to work deep into games. Had a clunker at Colorado early this year, but I think on talent, on what he does on the mound, keeping the ball on the ground, keeping the ball down, getting into his infielders, I really like the spot for Logan Webb once again, and I think there's strikeout upside. So, like I said, he went to him in my pitching choice in my one lineup. Hunter Green against the Mets, definite upside, 87, very cheap on the FanDuel slate, 91, pretty good price on the DK slate as well. Tariq Skubal, tons of strikeouts in that Angels lineup. Seth Lugo, good matchup against the Athletics. Peterson, decent strikeout upside, definitely some runs downside. Pitching against a free swinging Cincinnati team, very, very cheap on both sites. I like the option on both sites there. Justin Steele, tough matchup against the Diamondbacks, projects out pretty well for the money. Obviously very, very talented and pitching deep into games lately, pitching on form lately. Like the spot for Steele quite a bit. John Gray, Bailey Ober. Ober's been kind of clunky lately, but really good matchup against the White Sox. Gray, very talented pitcher, going up against the Guardians. It's a good spot. Aaron Nola, been really rough this year. A lot of really clunky starts for Nola, but projects out okay, but not really for the money. Eflin, same story. Projects out okay, but not really for the money comparative to where some of these other guys are. Like the spot's a little bit better for some of the other guys. Bobby Miller, talented kid. A lot of strikeouts on the board against Seattle. Griff Canning against Detroit. Obviously a pretty prime spot. Got a lot of strikeout upside. Later on the board, Thompson, Kirby, Giolito. I do like Kirby a lot, but I don't love the spot against the Dodgers. Giolito's been a mess basically all season. Jack Flaherty's been a mess since arriving in Baltimore. Christian Javier, kind of messy all season. Going up against Kansas City, feel like that should be maybe a little bit higher. Jose Barrios, big price against Boston. Don't like that spot at all. Weak bottom end with Schultz, Fate, Greinke, Chase Anderson. Jake Irvin's had a couple interesting outings. He's cheap, but not really projected well. So it's a really deep slate in terms of pitching, in terms of some of the spots for hitting. Starting off with this first one, Jack Flaherty. Like I said, kind of a mess. 3 1/3 last time out against Boston. 4 earned runs, a home run, 3 strikeouts, 8 hits to 19 hitters. 4 2/3 before that. 4 earned runs, 2 homers, 7 strikeouts, 6 hits at Arizona. 5 2/3, only 3 strikeouts, 3 earned runs versus Colorado of all teams. 7 earned runs in 3 innings at the Padres before that. He's just been kind of a bad starter since he's come to the Orioles. 22.4% strikeout rate, 10.6% walk rate, 4.43 xFIP with a 4.98 ERA. Kind of bumpy season for Jack Flaherty, who is a talented pitcher overall. I mean, 7,200, 8,100. Normally, I'd be fairly excited about these prices for Flaherty, but not really, not in this spot. Orioles lineup just dropped. Kierstad is in the lineup. He's hitting 7th. Why did I put it in the Rays? Whew. Not with it today. Rays lineup dropped too. Good. Yankees aren't on this slate, so I don't need that one. So, getting into the Orioles side, or the Rays side of things, rather, Yandy Diaz off the top, 47.38. High priced on FanDuel, but worth it. He's had that kind of a season, and he's cheap on DK at 47. Against this version of Flaherty, that's a really good spot. 53.6% hard hits for Yandy, 20 home runs, a 402 on base percentage, creating runs 57% better than average. Just has been very, very good all year. Only strikes out 15.8% of the time, 10.6% walk rate. Excellent player. Brendan Lau off the top, 9.28 in the home run model. Like him a lot for power. 19 home runs on the year, a 206 ISO. One of the harder hitting second basemen in the league, 47.8% hard hit rate. Randy Arozarena, 5,235. Affordable for all his talent. 22 home runs, 22 steals, 27% better than average creating runs. Excellent option in the middle of the lineup for a little bit of pop, a little bit of speed. He draws walks. 367 on base percentage for Arozarena. Isaac Paredes at 352 on base. He's got 29 home runs. As we talked about yesterday, he somehow does it on only 6.2% barrels, 28.3% hard hits. But he's consistently hitting for power all year long. 245 ISO, 138 WRC plus in only 511 plate appearances. Really, really good option. Plays 3 positions on the FanDuel slate. Josh Lowe, 4,000, 3,000. Interesting option across sites. 18 home runs, 29 steals, 122 WRC plus. Manny Margot, mix and match kind of a guy. 3,000, 2,300. At least he's cheap. 16% worse than average creating runs. Taylor Walls, 10% worse than average creating runs at this point. Luke Raley's very good. 19 home runs, 14 steals. He's been 31% better than average creating runs over 403 plate appearances with a 243 ISO. He's been mashing basically all season. He's still cheap. 3,400, 2,900. Spot in the lineup's not great. Surrounded by Margot, Walls, and Rene Pinto, not great. But you can definitely wrap him around to the top of the lineup. You could use him. He still connects to Josh Lowe, so you could use him with like Arozarena, Paredes, Lowe. So I think he's very useful down there. Rene Pinto, a little bit less so. He does have a very good contact profile in his 71 plate appearances. He's got 5 home runs on the board, so maybe a little bit more useful. Cheap catcher has always got some value anyway. 2,500 on the DK slate definitely qualifies as cheap. 275, 296, 522, 24% better than average creating runs. Just right on theme with the Rays. Just a guy you wouldn't necessarily expect to be doing that, having a good little season in his very small sample. Eflin on the mound for Tampa. 5 innings, 3 earned runs in each of his last 2, 6 and 7 strikeouts, basically on form. Going back to his start on the 25th against the Yankees, he had 11 strikeouts in that one of his season high games. Overall, 25.7% strikeout rate with a 3.53 ERA, 3.23 xFIP, a 3.6% walk rate. I think he's a very good pitcher. He's just going up against a fairly tough Orioles lineup. Big game, obviously, big division game, so that's going to be a hard-fought one. I don't know that Flaherty's going to be in it, but Eflin will definitely fight his way through a handful of innings unless he gets absolutely torched early on. I expect at least, solid 6 inning starts out of Eflin and a handful of strikeouts. We'll see what happens with the runs. I think he's a viable option, but I don't love the matchup. 9,300, 10-3, definitely on the board. Highly playable part. But I think I would prefer probably a little bit the Orioles bats. Where'd they rank out on the board? Yeah, they rank right in the middle of the board, 12th. That doesn't help at all. So I prefer the Rays bats against Jack Flaherty. And then Orioles bats and Eflin are really, really close. It's like mid-board versus mid-board. But I do think it's a very playable team. Gunnar Henderson obviously is a primo leadoff man. 5,500, 3,600, 26 home runs. 330 on base with a 126 WRC+. They moved him up ahead of Adley. Adley gets on base at a 366 clip. He's got 18 homers. It'll be interesting to see it work this way, since Adley's been so effective in the leadoff role. But maybe get his power back going. Maybe have him drive the ball a little bit more. Get that switch hitting bat down spot in the lineup. Anthony Santander, another switch hitter, 27 home runs, 226 ISO, 123 WRC+. Still only cost 4,500 on the DK slate. Is it 30 plus home runs 2 years in a row? He's on his way to a third. Ryan O'Hearn, good lefty power bat, 3,500, 2,700, still cheap, 13 home runs on the year, 127 WRC+. As this goes on, it just becomes more and more. This is the best 309 plate appearances he's ever had now. But you can ride the wave as long as those prices stay cheap. Hicks hitting 5th, not ideal, 2,700, 2,500. He's cheap. He's in the middle of the lineup. He's playable. Cedric Mullins, definitely good, 4,700, 3,200 is cheap for him. 30-30 guy, 14 home runs, 17 steals, and 398 this year. Would have much better counting stats had he not missed a lot of time. Histon Kjerstad, 2,000 on the DK slate, absent from the FanDuel slate. Shame on them. Top prospect. Yet another premium kid for this Orioles team. It just never ends. Dead minimum on the DK slate. Definitely interesting over there. In the minors this year, Kjerstad, 10 homers, 298, 371, 498, creating runs 16% better than average in 337 plate appearances at AAA. 11 homers, 310, 383, 576 with a 160 WRC+ in 206 homers at and 206 plate appearances at AA. So 21 combined home runs, solid numbers across the board. Very, very interesting player for the dead minimum. Jordan Westberg, another kid who came up as a leading prospect, 276, 327, 431, and has been 8% better than average for run creation this year. So he's been very, very good. He hasn't been a crazy breakout yet, but high-end talent, kid that they expect to stick at this level for quite some time, be a key part of this team going forward. So I like him at 3,426 with multi-position at the bottom of the lineup. Adam Frazier, 3,000, 2,500. A little bit less important, lower priority down the bottom of the lineup, but a playable part, a playable mix-in. So I think I go Rays bats up top, probably. Yeah, Rays rank 5th, 1st and 2nd for value, 7th for home run upside. Rays bats, Eflin, Orioles bats, very close. And then really not that interested in Jack Flaherty. Flaherty could throw an upside game here. He does have plenty of talent. He's spiked big games in the past. He's just been so bad, so off form since coming to Baltimore, and wasn't really pitching that well before arriving here. So just kind of an ugly season for Flaherty. 4.98 ERA, 4.43 xFIP, 10+% walk rate is really ugly with a 22.4% strikeout. Eflin's the way better between the two. At least this year. Bo Sox, Blue Jays. Jose Barrios, Brian Bayo. Bayo, basically on form for who he is. 3.68 ERA, a 4 xFIP, 19.6% strikeouts in 142 innings this year. Doesn't really give up a ton of power. 3.18% home run rate, but only a 5.4 degree angle. 7.1% barrel rate. So pretty good at missing premium contact. Allows some hard hits, some exit velo, but on cut the angle, it's only a matter of a few mistakes when you get up to where he is for home runs. 5 innings last time out, 7 hits, 3 earned, 4 strikeouts against Baltimore. 6 innings, 7 strikeouts, 3 earned at Tampa Bay. Clunker against Houston, only 2 earned runs, but only 2 strikeouts in 4 2/3.
Had a decent 7-inning start against them before that, but gave up 9 hits, but only one earned run. Struck out 4 in that one. So he's kind of a good mixer, I guess. 7,600, not necessarily the incorrect price on the DK slate. I don't think I really want him for 8,800 on FanDuel. There's not really a high ceiling here, not against the Blue Jays. Doesn't project all of that well. So I don't love the spot for Brayan Bello. Jose Berrios on the other side doesn't project well at all against these Red Sox. Last time out, 7 innings, 7 strikeouts, 2 earned runs on 5 hits against Kansas City. 7 strikeouts, 2 earned runs on 4 hits out of Oakland before that, but give up 5 earned runs in each of 2 before that against Washington and Baltimore. And it's just kind of been up and down. He's been more the good Jose Berrios this season than the bad Jose Berrios. But the price, especially on FanDuel, 10.5 is just outrageously high when he doesn't project at all well against the Red Sox here. 88 on DK. If you're building out 150 lineups, I think you take a couple of shots because he does have talent. But the Red Sox aren't exactly a low strikeout group. 22.2% for this confirmed lineup. But that's inflated a little bit by Story over only 117. Some of these guys down toward the bottom in fairly small plate appearances for Willy Abreu. The key guys at the top of the lineup are very low strikeout. So I don't love the spot for Berrios. Same thing for Bello. They're both playable, but they're just both kind of like meh, like lower mid-board type options. And I prefer going to the bats from these two teams. Alex Verdugo, Rafael Devers, Justin Turner, Tristan Casas, Masataka Yoshida. Top 5 are priority bats from the Red Sox. Verdugo creating runs 5% better than average, 13 homers on the board, getting on base at a 333 clip, ahead of Rafael Devers, who's 5,400, 3,900. He's cheap on DK. 39 is about right on FanDuel. 31 home runs, 238 ISO, 54% hard hit rate, 12.6% barrels, only strikes out 19% of the time. Justin Turner only strikes out 16% of the time, 283, 354, 473 triple slash, creating runs 21% better than average, hitting for power. Casas, 24 home runs, 226 ISO, 29% better than average creating runs, the best contact profile on the team. Well, best barrel rate on the team. Devers is ahead for hard hits. So is Willy Abreu, technically in a small sample. Yoshida, just very, very good bat-to-ball skills. 289, 342, 451, 112 WRC+. Plus. Does have 15 home runs and 8 stolen bases. Just gets involved a lot. 342 on base is very good. The average is good. It's dipped a little bit, but he's always putting the ball in play. Only 13.1% strikeouts, 41.3% hard hits. Good player overall. And he's cheap. 4,600, 3,100. Easy to get to. Abreu, 33, 29. So far, over 55 plate appearances, a homer, 2 steals, 159 WRC+, 367, 436, 510. Not bad. 51.4% hard hit rate. Not bad. Story, up to 2 home runs, 7 steals, 125 ISO, 35 WRC+, after hitting a home run yesterday. 11.4% barrels, 42.9% hard hits. That's what we want. The 7 steals are good. Don't worry about the triple slash. Everything will come around. He's cheap. Shortstop only on DK, but still second and short on FanDuel for only 2,700. That's a bargain. Luis Urias, 3rd home run, I think, last night. Pretty sure I saw that. Maybe the night before. 2,300 across sites. Very cheap, multi-position eligible. Reese McGuire, 2,100 at the catcher spot. Playable part. 184 plate appearances. An okay triple slash, but only 12% worse than average grading runs. On the Blue Jays side, Springer, Bichette, Guerrero, stars off the top. They're also very low strikeout at the top. 2 kind of similarly constructed teams. Bichette is a star at shortstop. He's very cheap on FanDuel at only 3,000. 18 home runs, 3 steals, 124 WRC+. Plus. A lot of the numbers have dipped, or like the home runs, the counting stats haven't really climbed recently. But he is still a star caliber player. Given that he's that cheap on FanDuel, that makes him a very interesting play. Vladdy, 3,400 on the FanDuel slate, also cheap. Springer at 36 is the most expensive out of that trio, but then Davis Schneider is 300 more than George Springer, which is just bananas. It's so silly how that's priced. Davis Schneider's been good, no denying it, over 110 plate appearances, but I know these 3 guys are good. I'm not sure this guy's this good. Yeah, these guys have underperformed. Get them while they're cheap. That's all. Toward the end of the season, this is going to be who they were this year. But we know, based on years past, how much more talented than these guys are. 19 homers, 19 steals for Springer is a little disappointing. 106 WRC+. Plus. 22 homers is definitely disappointing for Vladdy with a 169 ISO. Only 263, 339, 432. Down year for sure. But premium upside any given slate type guys. Schneider is very expensive. You're paying a tax for what he's done over 110 plate appearances, not necessarily what he's going to do. 19% barrels is great, though. 8 home runs is great. 404 ISO is ridiculous. 224 WRC plus is ridiculous. 2,800 for Kevin Biggio, third in outfield on DK. 25 second and first on FanDuel. 9 homers, 5 steals. League average run creation mark. Not terrible. Chapman back in the lineup. All his premium contacts, 17% barrels, 56.6% hard hits. Only turned it into 15 home runs, a 181 ISO. He did most of that damage early in the year, but just still makes tremendous contact. Very good hitter who could drive the ball against anybody. Kiermaier, Kirk, Varsho, a little bit less so at the bottom. Varsho's having a really rough year. Kiermaier and Kirk are just kind of mix and match parts. So, got to be Boston bats up top, I would think. Yeah, Red Sox bats. Blue Jays rank like in the middle. So, yeah, Red Sox bats, Blue Jays bats. Probably Barrios a little bit above Bayo. I just don't really want either one of them. I don't really like the pitching spot. We get this Rangers lineup. We did. Josh H. Smith, still in the lineup, 2,100, hitting 7th. Doesn't have a projection because I cannot get his name to work. I couldn't find where that error was or where that change was. And I just don't care if I get to Josh H. Smith or not, so whatever. Lucas Giolito, been a total mess most of the season. Last time out, 9 strikeouts, but gave up 4 earned runs on 4 hits in 7 against the Angels. Allowed 3 home runs in that game. 9 earned runs and 5 earned runs in the 2 before that one. It's just been pretty bad. 4.89 ERA on the year, 4.46 xFIP. He's just on that list of guys who were pretty decent starters who I had at least a little bit of faith in, who have really been just disappointing this year. 5.14% home run rate over 163 and 2/3, 29 starts, giving up an 11% barrel rate, 42.3% hard hits. Does have a 25.3% strikeout rate that plays okay against Texas. But, I mean, Semmy and Seager up at the top. Low teens, mid-teens strikeout rates. Jonah Heim, mid-teens. These guys aren't bad for strikeouts. It's not a super high strikeout lineup. And given all the power that they have, given how they've been scoring runs all year, I don't really like the spot at all for Lucas Giolito here. John Gray on the other side, definitely am more interested in. Cleveland, the one thing they do is avoid strikeouts for the most part. They've been scoring runs a little bit more in the second half, but still a pretty lousy lineup overall. I think there's plenty of upside for John Gray. There's ceiling beyond the projection. 21.8% strikeout rate on the season, a 3.96 ERA, a 4.31 xFIP. Totally fine. I'm all right with that. It's, he's good. He's not a superstar on the mound. He's not an ace, but he's a solid. If John Gray was your number 2, you'd be pretty okay with that. If he's your number 3, you're doing great. For Texas at this point is either number 1. I think that's shuffled around a lot. But they intended to have him be like their, 3rd, 4th man. Chuck Deuce is chiming in with some info about air pressure. The weather in Coors is not great. High pressure too, so the park advantage is muted quite a bit. Still plus, but not like normal. Okay, interesting. Yeah, I never got into the weather at Coors and how the weather at Coors manages it. Just because Coors is so specifically Coors on all slates, unless you get a situation like this where I like the pitcher there, and that makes me just like the pitcher a little bit more. Typically we're looking for Logan Webb to just pitch clean innings, keep the ball down. I think he's got strikeout upside, and if it mutes the park factors a little bit, that's even better. So much the better. Mamba says, I don't mean to skip ahead, but is there any better indictment of an offense than to be in Coors with a 10.5 point total? I mean, it's basically an adjusted 7.5 point total. I might fade Coors unless Terry says otherwise. I think there's certainly upside for the Giants side of Coors Field. And then you get the That's a low run total partly because of what Logan Webb does on the mound, which is just take power away, keep the ball down. So he typically induces low run totals for the opposing teams anyway. But yeah, the Rockies have just been inept, and I remind everybody every time we talk about it, their numbers for the season that we talk about when they're the worst team in the league against both hands of pitching for run creation by a pretty wide margin, that includes their games at Coors Field. They're just that bad. So I don't think you fade. I think you play the Giants side, probably undercut. I would imagine they're going to be popular. So I would just say undercut the Giants side, but play. Maybe you have a few shares of Rockies across a big slate of lineups, but the Rockies would be really low priority. But Logan Webb is definitely interesting for me. We'll get there. Power got burnt by KJ Osborne's 2 drops. I mean, 2 points away from the big showdown cash and wasn't duped. Oof. That would have been nice. Yeah, we didn't really get the shootout that I was expecting in that one. Didn't really think Philly was going to just grind them into dust with the ground game. That was an interesting twist to that game. Hurt still had his good game. Didn't quite get to the threshold we had him at projection-wise, but getting in the end zone on the ground twice helped. But yeah, the ground game for Philly was just dynamite last night and didn't really need to sling the ball around that much. And then Kirk Cousins, I mean, he had a game. He really did. They got burnt again by turnovers. Just stupid turnovers for that team 2 weeks in a row. Cost him probably another touchdown. But anyway. So I think we're taking Rangers bats here against Lucas Giolito. 8,387 for Giolito. You can throw darts with him if you want, but I'm much more on the Rangers side of things. You get the 2 stars off the top. We talk all the time about using these guys to just average those prices right down, and you're doing it with very good players in Nathaniel Lowe, Mitch Garver, to a lesser extent Robbie Grossman, but he's had a good week. Jonah Heim, for sure. Very good catcher, second catcher option on the DK slate. Play them both together on FanDuel if you want to. Ezekiel Duran and Evan Carter at the bottom of the lineup. Josh A. Smith kind of crammed in the middle there. Josh, he does have a good 11.5% barrel rate and 216 plate appearances. He's hit 5 homers, 20% worse than average grading runs. I'm just more interested in these guys. The multi-position on Ezekiel Duran for a guy, 14 home runs, a 107 WRC+. plus, just been better this year. You do get triple position on Josh Smith as well, though. So interesting, flexible part on the FanDuel slate anyway. Carter, 294, 435, 471 since coming up 23 plate appearances ago. A homer, 2 steals, 150 WRC+, plus, not bad. The Guardian side of things, if you want to go that route, I don't really like targeting John Gray. He's not going to... He doesn't typically get blown up. What's his high run total? Let's see. It's the worst John Gray's been this year. 5 runs. 5 runs twice. 6 runs once. Gave up 6 in a 2 1/3 inning start against Toronto back on June 18th. That was his worst start. Oh, no. There was another 6-run one at Houston. So 2 good teams. So a couple 6-run games in there. But really, overall, doesn't tend to get completely destroyed. If the Guardians put up 6, depending on how it fell among the key hitters, it could be valuable. But really, we're hunting for more than that. I don't think John Gray has much of a downside beyond that. Like, that would be a disastrous start against this team. They've been so bad for run creation all year. Average WRC plus for their starting lineup is 98, so 2% worse than average grading runs. You do have Stephen Kwan up to a 100 WRC plus. He's pushed the on base up to 341. Needs to get higher, but he's improving a little bit. 272, 341, 373 overall. No power to speak of. 20 stolen bases. He had 19 for the longest time. 3,600, 3,000. He's cheap. If he's getting on base ahead of Ramirez and Josh Naylor, he's playable, but he hasn't been very good this year. He hasn't been consistent at getting on base at all this year. Last year it was in the 370s and he had value. This year it's dropped by 30, 40 points all year, and he's been just around league average. So league average is a playable guy, don't get me wrong, but he's not standing out by any means. He doesn't make himself a priority. Jose Ramirez is a priority in Guardian stacks. Everybody knows that. 23 homers, 24 steals, 122 WRC plus, a 205 ISO. Just kind of an okay season for Jose. Not a monster season for him, but an okay season and a very good season for anybody else. Naylor having a good year. 306, 347, 503. Creating runs 28% better than average in his 430 plate appearances. 17 home runs, 8 steals. It's a good little year. If he had the additional 200 plate appearances or so that he should have, it would be probably an outstanding season. He is a good player. Somebody I was expecting to do well, got him on a bunch of the season-long teams. Just missed some time. Kind of cost him a better standout, breakout kind of a season, I think. Calhoun, 31-29. Now we're getting into the guys that are just kind of playable parts. 92 WRC plus in his 132 plate appearances, 4 home runs. The memory of being an okay lefty power bat. Ramon Laureano, at least he's not hitting cleanup today. 8 home runs, 9 steals, and 84 WRC plus. No triple slash numbers that anybody wants to bring up. Andres Jimenez has been pretty lousy all season. Does have 12 homers, 28 steals. We expected a little bit more. Definitely expected a better triple slash, positive run creation. Will Brennan, Gabe Arias, Bo Naylor. Playable power bats like power dart right there at shortstop, which is a key position, at catcher, which is a key position, or for Arias, 3 positions on the FanDuel slate. He's got 9 homers in 314. Naylor's got 8 in 194 as a cheap catcher. That's all they really are, though. Just kind of dart throws down there. These guys are the priorities if you're going to Guardians. But I prefer the John Gray side. If I was building out 150 lineups, he'd be one of my higher priority pitchers. John Gray, Rangers bats, meh from the Guardian side. You can play Guardian stacks if you want to. You can throw Lucas Giolito value darts. If nothing else, Giolito is at least correctly priced for value. But I just don't see him hitting much of a ceiling. This is a low projection, obviously. He could put up a 25, 28, 30-point FanDuel night, but it still wouldn't be overly relevant. I don't see much of a ceiling for him in this one. Reds, Mets. Oops. Jumping back over to the... Yeah, Mamba, you kind of hit it. It is interesting. When I was looking at it early today, I was like, it's a pretty deep pitching slate. There's a lot of good name recognition, a lot of good pitchers on the board. But you're right, it's got a very low peak, and it's got just kind of like a lot of, like, Nola hasn't been good facing the Cardinals, who they haven't been great, but they've got a good lineup. Bailey Ober hasn't been really on form lately. He's just kind of stuck in the middle. A lot of guys stuck in the middle, low ceiling types. Limited ceiling for like Steele because the Diamondbacks typically are fairly low strikeout. I do think there's an interesting ceiling for the price for David Peterson, given his strikeout ability and the Reds' free swinging nature. There's probably a ceiling for Lugo beyond this. Skubal probably has a good ceiling. Strikeouts in that Angels lineup. I do think there's probably ceiling here, but Hunter Green's not entirely safe against the Mets. It's that kind of slate. Eflin, good pitcher against a tough lineup. Bobby Miller, good pitcher against a tough lineup. This one's interesting for price on DK anyway. 91, a little high on FanDuel. So there's a lot of good pitchers going. But yeah, I don't necessarily know where the ceiling is. And there's a lot of good pitchers who haven't necessarily been pitching like themselves this year, like Christian Javier. Last year's Christian Javier would be up here. He'd be the slate leader, and he'd have a monster ceiling. This year's Christian Javier, pretty bad. So yeah, good call up. Since we were just talking about these two pitchers, David Peterson, 18 starts, 94 and a third, 24.5% strikeout rate. Rough in the ERA department at 5.34, but nearly 2 runs better at 3.76 xFIP. Tells the true story. 3.33% home run rate, giving up a little bit of premium contact, but low launch angle, 5.4 degree average launch, 8.1% barrels, and has been a good strikeout pitcher in the show in years past. 27.8% last year in 105 and 2/3, 24% in 66 and 2/3 the year before. Just gets dinged for runs from time to time, but the things that are under his control, the expected number for that is very, very good. Should be a better pitcher overall than he is, but I like the spot. You're going up against a Reds lineup that's got a 21.6% strikeout rate for this lineup because you've got no Ellie in it. You don't have those super high strikeout guys. Let's see, where does this Reds team stack up? The active roster anyway. Against lefties. Middle of the league, 103 WRC plus, ranked 16th. So technically it is above average by 3 runs. But the 21st ranked team in baseball has a 100 WRC plus. That's Minnesota against lefties. So there's a lot of good run creation marks against lefties. Theirs just ranked 16th. They've got a 22.8% strikeout rate collectively in the split against lefties. A lot of righties in the lineup, obviously. TJ Friedl, the only lefty. But it's a lot of their like lower end guys. India's a very good player. Senzel, not so much, never really landed. Spencer Steer having a good year, probably the second best guy in this lineup. Hunter Renfroe, premium power bat over the last few years, but shaky in terms of run creation, sequencing, anything like that. Strikes out at a fair clip. Tyler Stevenson, Ovi Marte, even Friedel, Harrison Bader's a non-threat at the plate, Luke Maley. It's a pretty weak version of the Reds lineup, even if they do limit strikeouts more than the aggressively good version of the Reds lineup. The players who will be in here today. So against left-handed pitching, India strikes out at a 25.9% rate. Renfroe 24.1, Luke Maley 22.2, Stevenson 21.6, Novi Marte 20, Senzel 19.3, Steer 18.4, and Friedel 17.5. Bader only 15.2. So those guys are interesting options for a little bit of run creation. Bader's actually been good against lefties. 92 plate appearances, a 167 WRC plus, shouldn't be ignored. 4 of his home runs have come against lefties. Friedel's been effective in the split as well. But there's not a lack of strikeouts for a guy who knows how to go get them. 6,600, I think Peterson's really interesting as a value guy on DK. 8,000, think the same thing on FanDuel. On kind of a tough slate, too, given that we were talking about a pool of guys with, maybe questionable ceilings. All these guys priced in like the 8s, the 9s, and then you've got lower projected high-priced guys. So it's kind of interesting that way. Hunter Green on the red side of things, 30.2% strikeout rate, one of the higher ones on the board. 10.8% walk rate, obviously projects out very well for the money, 91.87. Very, very playable. Got to wrangle the walks. Mets have some hitters in this lineup that are very good at drawing walks, can get to first base pretty well, definitely have power upside. He's given up a little bit of power, premium contact, 17.5 degree average launch, doesn't play all that well with 44.7% hard hits, 90 plus miles an hour of exit velo. You could argue that he's gotten a little bit lucky to only have allowed 3.44% home runs. 1.43 whip, giving up too many opportunities, but punches his way out of trouble a lot. 13.7% strikeout rate, and not where you'd want it for the ERA and the xFIP, but not aggressively bad either. Definitely a very talented young kid. Could go out here and win the slate for somebody. Mets side, there are strikeouts in that lineup, but it's not aggressively bad at 21.8%. You've got Jeff McNeil only at 10%. Their premium bats like Brendan Nimmo, Francisco Lindor, only in the low 20s. Pete Alonso, 22% for a guy who has 44 home runs, a 306 ISO, a 41.5% hard hit rate with 15.6% barrels. Alonso's a monster power hitter. He could be allowed to strike out another 6-8% if he wanted to, given a 10.6% walk rate and just all the power that he's got. The fact that he doesn't makes him super valuable. 5,200, 4,200, correctly priced on FanDuel, cheap on DK. Lindor for 5,000, 3,700. Definitely cheap on DK, a little bit cheap maybe on FanDuel. He's a $4,000 player on most nights the last few years. 26 homers, 26 steals, 210 ISO, 118 WRC plus. Hasn't exactly been on form in terms of the triple slash, but the counting stats are there. He's been very valuable. He's got an 11 plus in the home run model. Alonso leading the team at 17 plus, one of the highest marks on the entire slate, if not the highest. Green's been giving up power for sure. The rest of that lineup, I do like Nimmo from the top. He's cheap enough, 4,500, 3,200. He's actually very cheap, 358 on base. Creates runs 28% better than average, 23 homers of his own, a 46.8% hard hit rate. DJ Stewart hitting third, kind of interesting. Very cheap for a 3-hitter. A lefty with power upside, 48.2% hard hits, 14.1% barrels, 11 homers in that weird 140 plate appearances. Had kind of a similar outburst 2 years ago for power, so not an uninteresting bat. McNeil's a slap hitter. I prefer it when he hits ahead of Lindor and Alonso, not behind them. But he hasn't really been getting it done this year in that role, so I get why they dropped him. I would actually probably move him further down the lineup. I'd rather have like Mauricio Vientos, arguably Omar Narvaez. It should probably be McNeil 9th, Ortega 8th, move the other guys up, but whatever. He's playable where he is. 98 WRC plus. It's not like he's been tragic. He's just not been giving them the value, the things that he does well, he hasn't really been delivering. 266 average, 331 on base, not creating runs. And outside of that, only 9 homers, 9 steals, doesn't really do much else. Mauricio, 3 positions on FanDuel for 2,700, 306, 342, 444 so far, 118 WRC plus. Prime prospect for them. Exciting to see him land. He's been delivering so far, 50% hard hit rate, 6.66, the mark of the beast in the home run model. How can you avoid that? Vientos, very, very cheap for his power upside. 5 home runs in 175. Hasn't really been delivering, hasn't really been good. 65 WRC plus, a 136 ISO. None of that's good. 10.9% barrels, 52.7% hard hits. Sign me up. You could call him a AAA player, but you could say that Hunter Green was just at that level at the beginning of the year. So, what are we arguing about? They're 2 young kids starting out their careers. Hunter Green's had a better start, but he's given up a ton of power, and Vientos has a ton of power. He costs 2,200 at third base on DK, 23 third base, first base on FanDuel. Like that option a lot in stacks of Mets. Narvaez has a little bit of power as a backup catcher. Ortega, not really that much production. 94 WRC plus, 1 home run, 5 steals in his 105. If he gets on, maybe he steals you a base, but very low priority down here. Like these bats and these bats. If you are going to the red side, you probably want to focus on the guys that I was saying do well against lefties. So you're talking about some Spencer Steer, some Friedel and Bader if you're looking at the bottom of the lineup, but that's not ideal positioning for those guys. You do have strikeouts on the board here. India's very good, 4,600, 3,300. His price is down a little bit. 15 home runs, 13 steals. Only a 96 WRC plus for the year, but gets involved a decent amount. If you're going to Reds, I think he's a priority bat. Senzel, 3,025, plays 3 positions on FanDuel, 2 on DK, so at least he's a little bit cheap, flexible. 11 home runs, 6 steals. Unfortunately, one of his more productive seasons for counting stats, but just is never able to stay in the lineup consistently and never became the player he was once upon a time supposed to be. Spencer Steer's up there at 5,100 on the DK slate, but since that's the most expensive player in this lineup, if you're stacking them, it doesn't really matter. Everybody else just helps lower his price. He's had a good year, 21 homers, 14 steals, 114 WRC plus. Playable, not great. Hunter Renfroe does have tons of power. Like I said before, leading power bat over the last few years, 20 home runs on the season, but kind of a down year overall. And then these are just like mix and match parts. So, where are they on the board? Reds slightly above the Mets. I think I might flip that. Nah. Hunter Green's definitely better than Peterson, though. But the Reds lineup is so bad. That was a different version of the Reds lineup. Let me argue with myself a little bit more about something that doesn't truly matter. Let's call it Hunter Green, David Peterson. Close. Peterson's obviously at a lower price, higher value score. So it depends on how you want to look at it. And then Reds bats, Mets bats slightly ahead of Reds bats. Just because of the version of the lineup that the Reds have, I don't really like. Do like the power upside for the Mets. Green could go out there and strike out 10 of them, have a good game, though. I mean, it's on the board. He's a talented kid. Twins and the White Sox. Twins ranked 10th, right in the middle of the board, across the board, basically. White Sox, not so much. 12th ranked for power against Bailey Ober. Most of that's in Luis Robert and Eloy Jimenez. Ober's got a 3.82% home run rate on the season. 9.6% barrels is not great. 3.67 ERA, a 4.40 xFIP. The xFIP being worse than the ERA is never what you want to see. Only walking 5.2%, does strike out 24.1%. Talented pitcher overall. Has struggled recently. 4 innings last time. Hasn't gone 6. Hasn't completed the 6 innings since July 23rd. Limited for strikeouts lately in that stretch. Limited for giving up some runs in that stretch. So I don't like Ober as much as I normally do. But he does project out okay. Definitely playable at 85, 87. Going up against a White Sox team that's been lousy all season. They've got like 1.5 good players. It's a definitely playable spot. One of the spots that could have a ceiling on it. I wouldn't be stunned if Bailey Ober pitched 7 clean innings, struck out 7 or 8. Both bonuses, etc., etc. He would be in my pool. He would be a pitcher I made sure I at least had some shares of. If you wanted to target him, you absolutely almost have to play Luis Robert as like their only productive hitter. 128 WRC plus, a 274 ISO, 35 homers, 17 steals. Jimenez has 16 homers. Andrew Vaughn has 20. Those are your next two priority bats. And then it's just mix and match season. John Moncada, I do think, is a talented hitter somewhere buried under his production this year that's been pretty lousy. 8 home runs in 313 plate appearances, 8% worse than average creating runs. Lousy triple slash, lousy for contact. I mean, this isn't lousy. It's just okay. 3,829 at third base. He's playable, but he hasn't been good at all. Wasn't good last year. Was good 2 years ago. Timmy and Andrew have been really lousy up at the top. Benintendi and Anderson, respectively. Or reversed. 58 WRC plus for Tim Anderson. 91 WRC plus for Andrew Benintendi. Pretty weak. Gavin Sheets, Elvis Andrews, Corey Lee down at the bottom of the lineup. Pretty weak. 65, 83, and negative 17, but only in 44 plate appearances. Corey Lee is a cheap catcher bat. When we looked at him several weeks ago, did look like in the minors had hit a little bit, so was maybe interesting as a mix-in. Has not delivered anything, really. 1 home run, .075 ISO in 44 plate appearances, .075 average as well, 159 on base. That's hard to do. So, yeah, not a great option down there. Twins bats going up against Jesse Schultens. Like I said, they rank in the middle of the board. I think there's definitely potential there. Multi-position guys like crazy on the FanDuel slate. Less so on DK. Only Kyle Farmer gives you 2 positions on DK, but a lot of cheap pricing. Royce Lewis, your most expensive DraftKings player, for $49. Only Carlos Correa, the only other $4,000 player on the DK slate. You can get invested in some Twins here. A cheap building block, if nothing else. Showing decent power through the middle. They ranked 10th by points, 10th by FanDuel value, 7th by DK value, and 9th by home runs. A little bit of power potential. 8 in the home run model for Edward Julian. 8.47 for Max Kepler. 6.33 for Carlos Correa. Matt Wallner down here at 7+. Good double-digit home run totals from some of these guys through the middle. Some interesting ISOs to work with. Some very good contact profiles to work with. I like the Twins as a cheap option again. I think we've been on that a couple times recently, but I think we go right back to the well. Schultens is not a good pitcher. 4.44 ERA, 5.14 xFIP, 15.3% strikeout rate in his 79 innings, 10 starts, giving up a 3.54% home run rate. Not terrible for premium contact, but on a fly ball trajectory, any mistake that he's making is just leaving the ballpark. And I just think there's good enough power hitters that a couple of them will cash in. Schultens, did I even put him on this list? 5 innings, 4 strikeouts, 3 earned runs, 2 walks, 8 hits in 5 innings against Detroit the last time out. A strikeout, 2 home runs, 5 earned in 3 2/3 at Kansas City before that. Not much ceiling here. Not a lot to work with. I think you target him with Twins bats. Julian's got 13 homers on the season. Royce Lewis has 13 and only 217 plate appearances. Julian's total came in only 347 plate appearances. 2 very good young players off the top. 135 and 143 WRC plus. 190 and 230 ISOs. 45.4% hard hits. Double-digit barrel rates for both of them. 2 good options in the infield. Second base on both sides for Julian. Third base only for Royce Lewis on DK. You get additional value from him on FanDuel at shortstop. $3,700, you're paying a big ticket for him, but he's been worth it. I mean, 300, 355, 530 so far. He's been really, really good over his 217 plate appearances. Kirilloff, lefty bat with a little bit of thump. 8 home runs in 277 plate appearances, a 160 ISO, 116 WRC plus. He's cheap, first base and outfield on FanDuel. First base only, 2,800 on DK. Kepler I like a lot. Double-digit barrel rate, 48.5% hard hits. Leads the team with 22 home runs at 231 ISO. Solid lefty bat for very, very cheap. 3,800, 2,900. He should probably be, I was going to say their most expensive player. He should definitely be more expensive. Mid-4s, high 4s, approaching 5. A couple $100 more, 34 would be about right. Cheap. Discounts across the board here. Carlos Correa, 4,000, 2,900. He's got 18 home runs, 95 WRC plus, 171 ISO. Not great in the triple slash. It's not been a good season. Nobody's arguing that it has. But the 18 home runs are interesting from a player who costs this little at shortstop, especially one with the track record that Carlos Correa has. He does have a 9.8% barrel rate and 45.6% hard hits this season. He is not striking out that much. He is drawing walks. I mean, the season's going to end, so we're running out of time here. But let's say there was another 2 months to go and another 300 plate appearances on top of this. I would still be betting on Carlos Correa's chances to right the ship in terms of some of these other numbers. There are just too many positive indicators that he's not that far off. It's just a lousy, weird year for him. But for DFS purposes, when he's that cheap, heart of the lineup, I like the spot. Willie Castro, very cheap, 2,700, 3 positions on FanDuel. 31 outfield only on DK. More of a mix and match kind of a guy there, but he's interesting on the FanDuel slate. 31 stolen bases and only 357 plate appearances, while only getting on base at a 327 clip. It's a good stolen base total, runs a lot, runs aggressively. 7 home runs on the year. Not much to speak of in terms of the contact profile. Strikes out a little too much for what he does overall, but an interesting multi-way option for very cheap on the FanDuel slate. Matt Wallner, a lot of power. He's more interesting as an outfielder. It's 100 less on the DK board. He's probably more interesting than Willie Castro just for the power upside. 18.5%, barrels 47.2%, hard hits, 12 homers in his 207 plate appearances, 257 ISO. Jeffers, cheap catcher, a lot of power, 10 homers in 293. 131 WRC plus also. 11.4% barrels, 43.1% hard hits. And then Kyle Farmer, one of my sneaky guys. 102 WRC plus, not ideal. Does have 11 home runs in 309 plate appearances. That's exactly what we've been looking for from him. Last year, 14 in 583, 16 in 529 the year before. So he's actually been hitting for more power this year. You can see that in the ISO, up from 131 to 170. WRC plus is up this year. And he's just always cheap. I prefer him when he's not hitting 9th. I like it when he sneaks in and he's hitting like 6th. That makes him really, really good. But people don't tend to go to him. 2,500, 2 positions on DK. 2,500, 3 positions on FanDuel. Valuable player. Functional wraparound. You're not really looking for him to get on base. You're more looking for him to drive in some of these guys. But he plays as a wraparound given how low the price is and what positions he plays. So I like Kyle Farmer a lot, bottom of the lineup. Got to go Twins bats, Bailey Ober, minimal White Sox bats. No real interest in Jesse Schultz. Kevin O says Castro steal tonight. I like it. Chuck says Ober's a weird guy for sure. He kills when he shouldn't. He sucks when he should kill it. Yeah, I've had my frustrating nights with Bailey Ober for sure in terms of DFS. But I do think he's a talented guy overall. I've won with him as well. But yeah, I definitely get you on him being a little frustrating. You guys talking about aliens? What's going on in this chat? Just trying to catch up on. Trey wants to go live in a van down by the river. Mama says, "Wow, talk about mind melding. We literally have the same thoughts at the same time. Can't wait to do some shows with you in the future." Hey, man. I'm open. D. What's up, D? So Trey's talking about aliens. I didn't see the impetus of the aliens discussion, but did you see the ufologist that was testifying in front of the Mexican Congress with the little tiny alien bodies the other day? Didn't know what to make of that. Said they've done DNA on it, and they're not of origin from here. The one I actually found very interesting was the James Webb Telescope. Apparently detected traces of organic material, like not actual traces of organic material, but a chemical signature of the decay of organic matter in the atmosphere of a planet that is in the Goldilocks zone for around its red dwarf star, and has carbon dioxide, nitrogen, like all the components of life. They think it's actually a water planet, like almost entirely made up of liquid water, which would be interesting. But it seems like they may have detected some signatures of organic life. And it's a star like 100 million light years from here, so we're not getting there anytime soon. But just, kind of cool. But yeah, what you're saying there, Trey, I mean, exactly. In a universe so vast and expansive, literally infinite universe, it's a mathematical impossibility that we're alone. Now, the universe is so big that we may never get visited. We may never find anything. Certainly in our lifetimes, that's for everybody, that's what the odds are. But you could also argue that technology-wise, we've been surpassed by civilizations that are millions of years old and have developed all that technology. And maybe that's what's visiting us, that they're trying to figure out these UAPs. But yeah, 100% with you. There is definitely life out there, and there's definitely intelligent life out there. Life, again, mathematical impossibility that there's not some other form of life out there in the universe, in my mind. Intelligent life, there's that scale with the different levels of civilization. Once you get to a certain point of civilization, whether or not you wipe yourselves out, so on and so forth. So that depends. And, civilizations may have come and gone. Solid Pick says this show has gone haywire. Hey, some people know how to press the right buttons to get me off track. Mama says all you have to do is watch Prometheus. Literally just watched that the other day. Good movie. Underrated movie, actually. Will they play baseball? Astros, Christian Javier. Royals, Zach Greinke. Zach Greinke has a 1-15 record this year. 3 2/3 in each of his last 2 starts, 4 2/3, 4 innings before that. Hasn't completed 5 in quite a while. I don't think anybody here wants to go to Zach Greinke. Pretty sure we're all ahead of that curve. 15.8% strikeout rate, 5.47 ERA, 4.44 xFIP. Still doesn't walk anybody, 3.6%, sparkling little walk rate there, but giving up a 4.70% home run rate. Tons of power for the Astros on the other side. Tons and tons and tons of upside for Houston on the other side. Gotta love the spot for the Astros. They rank 3rd overall on the board, 5th by power. Down a couple spots from there for points per dollar just because there's a lot of expensive guys on this team. That said, Jeremy Pena is down to 2,700 on FanDuel if he's hitting second. That's kind of an interesting spot now that he's getting cheap just for that spot in the lineup, which he is going to be in because this lineup's confirmed now. So Pena 45-27, only 98 WRC plus, same 10 home runs, 11 steals as he's had all year, but that's at least interesting, hitting behind Altuve ahead of Alvarez, Bregman, and Tucker. Not an uninteresting spot, helps you pay for the other guys that you actually want. Altuve, superstar, 308, 397, 539, 231 ISO, 159 WRC plus, in only 340 plate appearances. A monster season. 17.1% strikeouts, 11.8% walks. Little man puts the ball in play pretty regularly. Jordan Alvarez, 431 plate appearances, 27 homers, 287 ISO, a 171 WRC plus. One of the best hitters in all of baseball, one of the best power hitters in all of baseball. 18.8% strikeouts, 14.2% walks, pushing himself into Juan Soto territory with those numbers. 17.2% barrel, 52% hard hits. Monster hitter. 6,100, 4,100, probably too cheap. Alex Bregman, 56.35, appropriately priced, 23 homers, 180 ISO, 127 WRC plus. Kyle Tucker, 139 WRC plus, 224 ISO, 27 homers, 28 steals, 10.3% barrels, 45.2% hard hits. He only strikes out 13.2% of the time, walks 11.9% of the time. It's unfair to have these low strikeout rates, high walk rates for all these amazing hitters. It's just not fair. Jose Abreu, he doesn't even strike out that much. He's got a 41.2% hard hit rate now. He only costs 3,900, 2,900. He's up to 14 home runs, up to an 80 WRC plus. None of this is good, but it's a lot better than he looked when he was just completely dead on the floor at the beginning of the season. Michael Brantley, 42-3,000. Good 35 plate appearances so far. Right on form for who Michael Brantley is and what he does. Nothing to argue with there except for the price. He's too cheap. 42-3,000. That's a $5,000, $3,500 player if I ever saw one. Chas McCormick, 44-35. Correctly priced on FanDuel. Cheap on DK. 11.2% barrels on the season in 399. 20 homers, 16 steals. Creating runs, 40% better than average. 228 ISO. Chas McCormick's really good. We've liked him for several seasons. He's had his breakout this year in limited plate appearances overall. He's hitting late in the lineup. You'd like him up here, but you take him here for sure, especially if it makes him lower owned. Martin Maldonado, all 13 of those home runs were weird and very low owned and very inexpensive. that's all he really does is the infrequent home run. So if you happen to have him one of those 13 nights, hopefully you got paid for it. Could happen again tonight. Targetable pitcher for sure. MJ off the top for the Royals. Interesting bat there going up against Christian Javier. I like the leadoff spot for MJ. He just hasn't delivered on anything that we like about him. 29.1% strikeouts is too much, but 9.4% walks isn't bad, but still only gets on at a 305 clip. Doesn't support any kind of run creation beyond what he does himself, really. 11.5% barrels, 50% hard hits. Doesn't equal 14 homers and a 157 ISO most of the time, but for him it does. He's very, very cheap. He's easy to get to. Bobby Witt, Sal Perez, they're two top options. Sal, down season, still only 21 homers, down to an 84 WRC plus, a 162 ISO. Bobby Witt's been carrying the team, 28 homers, 44 steals, a 218 ISO, 114 WRC plus. Tremendous contact, very low strikeout rate, appropriately priced. Probably better as a one-off in most situations. But I do think it's a playable matchup against Christian Javier. Like I said, if we had last year's version of Christian Javier in this spot, he would be like the leading pitcher today. 33.2% strikeouts last year, 2.54 ERA, 3.53 xFIP, sub-1 WHIP. Year before, 30% strikeouts, too many walks, 3.55 ERA still, 4.35 xFIP. Hell, even if we had this guy, he'd be the top pitcher of the day. Unfortunately, we're saddled with this guy this year. 4.78 ERA, a 5.35 xFIP. Never want the xFIP to be higher, especially not when it's into the fives. 3.81% home run rate, 10% barrels, strikeouts down to 21.9%. He's lost more than 10% of his strikeouts. What's that, 12? 11 and a half? That's awful. 11% swinging, 24.7% CSW, down pretty hard from last year. Really just not been on form at all this year. Last few, 5 Ks, a home run allowed, 4 earned runs against San Diego in 4 innings. 8 strikeouts, but 3 earned runs allowed in 6 against the Yanks before that. 4 strikeouts, 4 earned runs in 4 at Boston. 3 strikeouts, 3 earned runs in 5 versus Boston and Houston. Just hasn't been good. Tough spot. I could absolutely see him coming out, dominating this game, cruising, finding his form finally, pitching a great game here against the Royals. It's the Royals. They're a bad team. He is a talented guy. But, yeesh. Casa scratched Arcathalza. That sucks. Love Casas. Lone Wolf's like 3 hours from Roswell. Interesting. That's just like a hot spot out there, just looking up at the sky. You ever see anything, Lone Wolf? Anybody ever see anything? I would love to see a UFO. Just anything where I was just like, holy shit, what was that? Or a ghost. Not the biggest believer in that. I'm not entirely sure where I fall. I fall on the side of science. I'm not a religious type, so I don't really believe in like afterlife or anything like that. But there are enough things out there that kind of intrigue me about the paranormal ghosts. I certainly think there's a lot more going on in the world than we understand or know. Less so on the conspiracy side, more so on the just like we're these tiny, insignificant, dumb animals that we're barely graduated from being literal apes. I don't think we've figured everything out just yet. So there's a lot out there in the universe that we don't understand. I'm not totally with you on the faking the moon landing. I think we've been there. That falls more into the conspiracy bucket for me. But it's an interesting enough topic of conversation for sure. What I think sucks and what I love on Apple is the show For All Mankind, where the premise is like the space race basically kept going. I won't say why or what happens, but it's a really good show. And like we just gave up on. I'm just really big on like we've got to become multiplanetary. We've got to continue our advancement. Like we're explorers by nature. That's what being on this planet used to be. And then, so explorers from a Eurocentric history perspective, obviously, right? We're talking about that. Those guys didn't know what was where, and they went out and they explored. And so did indigenous people from all around the world throughout the entirety of human history. If you go back to all of our basic, DNA ancestors, mitochondrial Eve and everything in Africa, migrating up and out was an exploration, right? So all throughout human history, we've been explorers, we've been wanderers, we're supposed to take to the stars. That's our next big voyage. It's the sea, right? It's the exact same thing as exploring the sea. We should be multiplanetary. We should have put boots on Mars is my overall point by now. Kevin, oh no, we were talking about that just a little while ago. Do you really think we're it with this massive universe? Nah, can't be. Trey says, do you remember the movie Basketball? I literally watched that this week. It's been on cable. It's been on like Showtime or one of those. So I literally saw that this week. Funny movie. And yeah, that would be a fun sport, full stop. Like, take DFS out of it. Like, if there was a pro basketball league, that would be so much fun. To the point where I'm actually somewhat surprised that it's never actually taken root and sprung up somewhere. Just like do a version of that. They basically lay out all the rules in the movie. It's super fun. Basically anybody can play. The primary skill seems to be being funny and then being able to take like standing still basketball shots. But yeah, funny movie. I really enjoy Basketball. I like their playoff bracket system where it's like 19 months of playoffs and they got it like back and forth across the thing. It's a good bit at the beginning too when they're talking about all the teams and franchises that moved. And then Minnesota moved to Los Angeles where they have no lakes. And the Jazz moved to Utah where they hate music or whatever it was. Melvin Mayo, absolutely. We should have colonized the moon by now. Yeah, all the shit that they're saying, all right, in the next 20 years, we're going to try and build a little base on the moon that can be a fueling station for a voyage to Mars and yada, 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 yada. Yeah, absolutely. Should have happened. We just took all the money out. We bailed on NASA in the 80s. It was just like, not gonna happen anymore. But yeah, hopefully we're back on track. Speaking of back on track, Astros bats against Zach Greinke, absolutely. We talked about them up and down. Royals bats continuing down the lineup against Christian Javier. I do think they're playable in kind of a cheapo, lousy team, but cheap and against a struggling pitcher. Edward Olivares is a little bit interesting at 3,200, 10 homers, 9 steals, 103 WRC plus. Michael Massey, as we've talked about, I do think there's a better bat lurking there. 13 homers, a 149 ISO, 68 WRC plus. It's been kind of disappointing overall, but the contact profile is okay. 22.7% strikeouts. Nelson Velasquez, 20% barrels, 47.5% hard hits, 12 homers in 124 plate appearances with a monster 357 ISO. He's been mashing. A little bit of upside there. Nick Lofton, 3,400, 2,400, 345, 424, 586 over his first 33. Got to keep it up, but made good contact so far with 50% hard hits. Drew Waters, Nick Prado, mix and match options, but I don't dislike Prado at the bottom of the lineup. 9.1% barrels, 42.2% hard hits, 7 cheapo lefty home runs early in the season in 308 plate appearances. We used him a few times successfully early in the season and don't remember succeeding with him since. But I do think that there's potential there for the lefty bat. Trey says, Terry, as a scientist, energy can't be created nor destroyed, so the energy that is Terry always was, always is, and always will be. Yeah, but does it maintain the personification of me after death? Does it maintain, like, why would the energy that's trapped in this weak, feeble human form, with this, feeble human personality, once freed, want to continue just lurking around like, this apartment, haunting the next people that come by? Kevin O says, wait till Joker chimes in. He just stands up and starts. Mama says, Star Wars would trade it for the war on drugs. Exactly. Yep. That was a gigantic waste of money when the obvious solution was just to legalize and control things and manage them and tax them. How about that? If there was a way to turn moon rock into bombs, we'd be mining the moon tomorrow. Fair point, Dan. Fair point. Yeah, the biggie's when we find within reach an asteroid or a what you call it, whatever, a planetoid, something like that, something that we literally could mine, something that's actually got value. Like they found ones that are, we think this planet's made entirely of diamonds, but it's 29,000 light years away, so nobody will ever get there. But when we find one like in our asteroid belt, that's like, oh my God, that's the GDP of China in that asteroid. If we go mine it, that's going to be interesting. That'll be the next step for guys like Elon and those guys. Although if Elon gets to Mars, he's absolutely planting a flag and declaring himself Emperor of Mars. I think we all know that, right? Like, there's no way he's coming back saying, like, yep, I got there. That's the way. Everybody go. He's just saying, mine. My planet. Four prongs here. Gonna take everything down tonight. I like it. Look, these weak slates do present opportunity. These ones where a lot of people just kind of punch out toward the end of the season. You've got a lot of players that people aren't necessarily familiar with. A lot of people more like, like me, who are a little bit less interested in some of the prize pools they're rolling out. So I'm not going to be entering my full slate of lineups. I'm just throwing one in. I think that's probably pretty common through a lot of the pros and stuff. So yeah, I do think that there's opportunity on the board for sure. Oh, Mamba with an interesting perspective on energy. Okay. Interesting. Yeah, I was mostly being facetious when I was saying, trapped in this human form and everything. I do, like I said, I do think there's compelling evidence, and that argument, that scientific basis, that scientific argument is somewhat interesting for a way to look at it. But then you get into the religious aspects of it is that now am I talking about I believe in the soul and blah, 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 blah. You could say that's what the representation of the soul is, et cetera, and we're going deeper into that. But yeah, it's an interesting conversation, and we can finish it another time. So this one, neither pitcher really, but if you had to, Christian Javier, obviously. Astros bats way up here, Christian Javier. Or no, Astros bats way up here, Royals bats, then Christian Javier. There is no need on this earth to play Zach Greinke. Nationals Brewers. Casual Friday. I'm not playing this slate outside of the one lineup I've already built by hand, so we've got time to meander our way through this nonsense. The one that we can't do that on is whenever the NFL show pops up. Considering we went 4 hours on the NFL slate last weekend, if you guys weren't around for last Saturday night's show, that one went 4 hours and really didn't take that many tangents. Not that I can remember. There was just a lot to get through. But yeah, we'll try and stay on track for that one. But I expect when I finally get up for an NFL show for this week's slate, we'll go through it a pretty good clip because I'm going to keep it limited to the actual plays. We won't be talking about so many special teamers and stuff. Dennis says if Elon gets there, he deserves to be emperor until someone overthrows him. Yeah, I don't disagree with you. I mean, that's been I claim this land for whoever. Trey says the official NASA narrative, but I definitely think they have a lot of black budget programs. Oh, yeah. Oh, there's no doubt about that. Not necessarily NASA, but like DARPA. So on and so forth. Like that's, yeah, for sure. There's all sorts of stuff going on. And I think that's where you can attribute a lot of the UAPs, a lot of the things that, people see a triangular formation of lights flying in the sky. A lot of that's DARPA. A lot of that's our government doing, black budget development of different weapons and planes and stuff. Trey says, I wouldn't say maintain it goes to a different form with the form I have. There's no idea. Yeah, I'm with you. Mamba, Terry, seriously, that was an all-time great show. I should have won the Millie from that show. Thank you, buddy. I appreciate that. I felt the same way. Ah, man. So many of those things just like, I felt like if I had sat there and hand-built 150 lineups, I'm not saying I would have won the Millie, but I feel like I would have had a couple more iterations of the combination of like some of the key guys that really delivered that we talked about. Overall on that slate, I had too much Kirk Cousins, who did have a good game, but like we talked about yesterday, those 2 fumbles and the interception just crushed him. Crushed my lineups. But yeah, that was, I'm looking forward to taking another shot at it this week. It's going to be a fun one. Nationals, Jake Irvin on the mound, Wade Miley on the mound for the Brewers. I don't think we really need either one of these pitchers. Jake Irvin hasn't been completely uninteresting lately. 6 innings, 4 strikeouts, 2 walks, an earned run, and 3 hits against the Dodgers of all teams the last time out. 4 strikeouts, 3 walks, 3 earned against Miami, and 5 before that. 3 strikeouts, 1 earned, 3 walks, 4 hits in 6 at Miami before that. 7 strikeouts in 6 with no runs allowed in 5 hits versus Philly before that. So an interesting stretch of starts. For 6,400, 7,700 against a mid-range Brewers club, As a value dart on DK, even though he doesn't project great, I do think maybe you could talk me into a share or two of Jake Irvin if I was building 150. Would be very, very low priority, just value dart style. But a 4.20 ERA on the season, the 5.12 xFIP kind of betrays him. Only 18.7% strikeouts over 113 and 2/3, but just seems like he's kind of hitting a little bit of a stride of late in terms of limiting runs a little, finding a couple strikeouts in a couple of those games. The Brewers aren't an overly high strikeout bunch, though, so there's not a ton to really support that. It's probably one that you should leave on the shelf. Wade Miley, I don't think we need to go to. 7,000 on both slates. Projects a little bit better than Jake Irvin, going up against the Nationals club that is very good against lefties most of the time. He's a low strikeout guy. They're very good at limiting strikeouts, if nothing else, against lefties. They're very, very good at not striking out against lefties. He's mostly an innings eater anyway. 3.30 ERA is fine, but a 4.90 xFIP tells the truth. 3.54% home run rate. That comes on only 31.2% hard hits, 7.8% barrels. He's not terrible for checking power, if I'm remembering correctly. 1.89% home runs last year in only 37 innings. 2.46 in a full sample 163 innings the year before. 8-degree average launch, 6.1% barrels, 34% hard hits. So he doesn't get torched. Doesn't give up a ton of home runs, ton of power most of the time. I do think this Nationals club, just with their bat-to-ball skills, has the ability to get to him here. They're frisky against lefties. They typically pick up more ownership against lefties. CJ in the top spot has been pretty bad against lefties. Let me pull up the board so I can give you the actual numbers. Nationals versus lefties. Yeah, CJ's bottom of the barrel, 45 WRC plus across 155 plate appearances against lefties this year, slashing 168, 248, 277. They'd probably be better off with somebody else in the leadoff spot, but they're just consistently rolling him out there regardless of the handedness of the pitcher. And against a low strikeout guy like Miley, there's probably the belief that he can put bat on ball. Lane Thomas has been good against lefties, 153 WRC plus with a 232 ISO on the season, only strikes out 17.6% of the time, 8 of his home runs, 9 of his stolen bases, and a 333, 379, 565 triple slash against lefties this year. Very, very good. Joey Meneses in the lineup after him, second best on the team for run creation against lefties, 108 WRC plus. Keibert Ruiz, 106 WRC plus. He's in the lineup, yeah. 106 WRC plus for Keibert. He's 299, 340, 416. Only one home run against lefties in an odd bit of output. Meneses only has 2 home runs against lefties. Meneses hasn't hit for a ton of power this year, 11 on the season. Keibert's got 17, but oddly both mostly against righties. He does have, though, Keibert has a 5.4% strikeout rate against lefties with a 4.1% walk rate, meaning everything is put in play. Who do we have in the lineup after that? Oh, good. So Carter Kaboom, 91 WRC plus, dips a little bit, but only a 12.5% strikeout rate. It's only 24 plate appearances, 2 home runs against lefties. The guy that I said, oh, good about is Ildemaro Vargas. Very interesting in this spot. Never really gets all that much attention. In 94 plate appearances against lefties this year, he's striking out 7.4% of the time, walking 3.2% of the time with a 189 ISO, a 267, 298, 456 triple slash, exactly at league average for run creation, 3 home runs. So just a second guy. This guy and this guy put the ball in play like crazy. Overall, only 9.7% strikeouts and 6% strikeouts for those 2 hitters. So they're very good at not striking out against everybody, but particularly against lefties. These guys are just putting the ball in play. Michael Chavis, 200 or thereabouts ISO for his career against lefties. I believe both of those home runs this year. Yep, both of those home runs this year have come against lefties. This season against lefties, a 281, 313, 422 triple slash for Michael Chavis, but a 30.9% strikeout rate. Kind of defies the team theme, but does have a little bit of power. Alex called Jake Young. Call's been good, 99 WRC plus, so he's dipped a little bit recently. Only a 126 ISO, but only strikes out 16.7% of the time in the split. Walks 14%, 3 home runs, 2 steals in the split in 150 plate appearances. And then Jake Young, only 17 plate appearances so far, 73 WRC plus against lefties. So a lot of interesting bats like here, Like straight through, like right there, really, the heart of the lineup. It's just Jake Young and CJ Abrams. But realistically, Thomas, Meneses, Kiebert, Vargas, and then one of either either Kaboom or Chavis probably would be my top priorities. Really like the through the middle, though. Those three in Ilmano, very, very cheap. Yeah, Nats are kind of interesting against Miley. Like I said, Miley doesn't typically give up the monster games, but there's enough there. There's enough idea of run creation. There's enough ability, and he's certainly not going to go spike a monster strikeout game. For the season, highest run total he gave up was 7 back in May against the Dodgers. Not that looking at game log like that is predictive at all. It's just indicative of typically what his output typically is. And I think if we look in seasons past, it's pretty similar. Last year in the limited 8 starts, 37 innings, never gave up more than 3. 2021, never gave up more than an ugly one, 8. Had an 8. Oh, that was at Colorado, though. We'll forgive that one. 8 runs in 3 innings at Colorado on May 14th, 2021. Who else is talking about a May 14th, 2021 start for Wade Miley in the industry today? Nobody. That's who. Hit the like button. Hit the subscribe button. So, yeah, we're not playing Miley. We're probably not playing Jake Irvin. Maybe you could squeeze a little bit of SP2 value at 64 on DK, but I don't really like it. Christian Yelich back in the lineup for the Brewers, 55-34, 17 homers, 27 steals, 117 WRC+. Player that I like a lot. The price is about right on DK, about right on FanDuel, but just a very good run creator, a very good striker of the baseball with a 49.7% hard hit rate. Draws walks, doesn't strike out that much. He's a star. I like Christian Yelich a lot. William Contreras, great spot in the lineup for a catcher, especially on a day where Adley's hitting second, not leading off. That puts them in basically a tie. Contreras has been very productive this year. 48.4% hard hits, 15 home runs, 281, 357, 450. Creating runs 20% better than average to lead this team. It's a rare feat for a catcher. Carlos Santana, 19 home runs, 233, 313, 406. Very inconsistent, but power from both sides. Sal Frelick, 3,800, 3,000. Lefty, a little bit of pop in the bat, 3 home runs, 6 steals. Really cooled off a lot since the hot start. 105 WRC plus, maintained over 168 though. Very cheap, very capable part hitting cleanup. Willy Adames, another really inconsistent power hitter. Does have the 24 home runs though. Plays a key position at shortstop. Only 4,400, 3,100. Basically a home run or a zero. But 13.1% barrels, only 35.6% hard hits, 25.9% strikeouts, 10.4 walks. Yeah, he's a priority in stacks of Brewers, but he's not somebody who compels me to go to the Brewers. Mark Canha, playable veteran part for 3,000, 2,700, 10 homers, 8 steals, 114 WRC plus. Gets himself on base, 360 on base percentage over 445 plate appearances. Especially if you're going to the bottom of the lineup for Rowdy Tellez. Canha's not uninteresting hitting ahead of him. Roster those guys as a pair. Rowdy, 2,400, 2,600, 13 homers and 326 plate appearances, a 169 ISO, 39.5% hard hits, 9.3% barrels, was better for contact last year. Had 35 home runs and 599 plate appearances last year. More of a part-time player this season, but power for days from the left side for Rowdy. Mix and match options on Monasterio and 2-rank. I kind of like going like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, or like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Something like that. I like the idea of pairing Canha and Tellez for cheap from the bottom of the lineup. Just given how much he's going to get on and give Tellez the opportunity to hit the 2-run homer. I don't dislike that. Interesting combos for the Brewers today. So, yeah, Brewers bats, Nationals bats. Neither pitcher really, but I probably prefer Jake Irvin's 6,400 SP2 price to Wade Miley's $7,000 mediocrity. Phillies, Cardinals. Phillies lineup is in. Kyle Schwarber in his usual role leading off, 5,700, 3,800, 43 home runs, 348 on base, 198 batting average, but who cares? He's got 43 home runs. He's scored 100 runs. He's driven in 94. He's creating runs 21% better than average overall. He's got a 277 ISO. He's got a 16.1% barrel rate, 49.3% hard hits. Kyle Schwarber can play for my team any day of the week. 5,700, 3,800, arguably a little bit cheap. Trey Turner, look at the return. 6,200, 4,100, back to full price. 270, 321, 472, 11% better than average creating runs, up to a 202 ISO. 26 homers, 27 steals, 94 runs scored, 75 ribbies. He turned it all around. It only took him 6 weeks to compile a complete season. Really amazing. Dynamite turnaround for Trey. I think you can pay for him full price, certainly, but you can be happy to pay for him if you're stacking Phillies against Zach Thompson here, which I think you probably can do. Phillies rank 9th by fantasy points. More limited for power than I would expect. I wonder why that is. Thompson, 2.24% home run rate this year. 2.21 in a very small sample last year. Doesn't really give up much premium contact. Doesn't really give up much of the launch angle. So I guess that makes sense with the power. Schwarb's still approaching the magic number. Everybody else kind of limited, though. Bryce Harper's got more power than this. 17 home runs on the season, a 191 ISO. Alec Boehm has 16 homers, 156 ISO. This configuration of the lineup, a little bit more sequence run creation focused anyway, but there's definitely power lurking here. A lot of solid home run totals. Real Muto, one of the more valuable catchers in the league, 18 homers, 13 steals, 102 WRC plus, 205 ISO. Only cost 5,200, 3,000. Playable on the FanDuel slate for sure, given his spot in the lineup, given the correlation with all these guys, directly with these guys. Castellanos down to a 103 WRC plus, still has 23 homers, 8 steals. Pretty good contact profile. Cheap now, 4,800, 3,200. Was carrying the team for part of the season. Bryson Stott having a very good year, 15 homers, 28 steals, 107 WRC plus in 586 plate appearances. 4,900, probably not enough on DK. 3,100, definitely not enough on FanDuel. Christian Pache, Johan Rojas down the bottom of the lineup. Pache, 2 homers and a stolen base in his 69 plate appearances, 127 WRC plus. Thought of as more of a defender overall, but has put bat on ball fairly well in the tiny sample so far this year. Has had those weird outburst games too in these 2 tiny samples. 260 plate appearances last year, 3 home runs. I think 2 of them came in the same game, if I'm remembering from last year. Only a 35 WRC plus, so just wildly inconsistent. 166, 218, 241. So it was really just the one weird outburst game, and then I think a good debut game back 2 years ago. So it hasn't really delivered much, but sneaky, unowned late in the lineup. Johan Rojas, same thing, cheap. 280, 330, 393 so far, 97 WRC plus. Not a terrible option late in the lineup. Thompson does have a pretty good strikeout rate, does limit home runs fairly well. 3.61 xFIP, but a 4.06 ERA in his 51 innings, 6 starts. Last time out, 5 innings, 6 strikeouts, 3 walks, 3 earned on 5 hits at Cincinnati. Tough park to pitch in for sure. 6 strikeouts, a home run, 3 earned on 7 hits in 7 innings against the Pirates. I think we were on him for that start. Just a bad matchup. I don't really love the spot for him. He projects out okay, though. I mean, given this projection and these prices, 62.75, you could probably throw some Zach Thompson darts. High enough strikeout rate to support the idea of success. The Phillies are good, but there's definitely some strikeouts to be found among some of their good hitters. Schwarber for sure. Turner a little bit. Harper a little bit. Real Muto and Castellanos for sure. Bottom of the lineup for sure. So there's a little bit of believable upside for Thompson in a both-sided situation. And then there's this guy. 10-4, 10-2, the poster boy for the guy I had total and complete faith in for years, and has kind of struggled and scuffled and been disappointing overall this year. 4.64 ERA, a 3.76 xFIP is much better. This is who he should be, or even better than that. Last year it was a 2.77 xFIP and a 3.25 ERA. This is the Aaron Nola that I know and love. This guy, tough. Down 4 points in strikeouts, up 3 points in walks. ERA climbed by a run. ERA up by more than a run. xFIP up by a run. Swinging strikes are down. CSW's down. Home runs are way up by two percentage points. Hard hits way up, 31.6 up to 37.7. Barrels way up, launch angle up. It's been a clunker of a 2023 for Mr. Nola. That said, talented guy. Can pitch very deep into a game. 29 starts, 176 and a third. Has had some short outings this year, but typically, when he's on form, we're talking about 7 solid innings from Aaron Nola. He projects out okay, just not for the money really. He was downboard a little bit, and then that high price comparative to a bunch of guys in the 8s and the 9s who project better are in better matchups than facing the Cardinals. I don't really love the spot for Nola. Sad to say. For a lot of other guys, these are perfectly fine, serviceable numbers. The power's not where you'd want it. The ERA's not where you'd want it. But a 25.6 strikeout rate with a 3.76 xFIP, for a lot of pitchers, that's great. That 6.1% walks, you would take that all day. It's just not Aaron Nola, and not at this price. Cards bats against Nola, you could probably capitalize. Not that he's been completely terrible, but you can capitalize on the diminished form a little bit. Lars Nootbaar off the top, 42-32. Pretty good lefty bat, 13 homers, 10 steals, 126 WRC+. plus. Goldschmidt, 24 homers, 10 steals, a 124 WRC+. plus. Arenado, 26 homers, a 111 WRC+, plus, 199 ISO. That's slipped a little bit. 19 homers on the board for Wilson Contreras. He's got a 200 ISO, a 125 WRC+. plus. So you don't get Nolan Gorman in the lineup. You get Alec Burleson. That's a downgrade hitting third, 2,800, 2,300. He does have 8 homers. He does make okay contact, 40.1% hard hits, and he limits strikeouts very effectively. So he's putting the ball in play, if nothing else. But kind of a limited bat, 15% worse than average creating runs over 333. Palacios, Jordan Walker, Tommy Edman, Mason Wynn. Mix and match parts down lineup. Palacios, a productive 48 plate appearances so far with 4 home runs, a 158 WRC+. plus. Walker, pretty okay rookie season, but just not the big breakout that people were expecting at the beginning of the year. But up to a 116 WRC+, plus, 15 homers, 6 steals, 271, 339, 447. If they had just given him a full 598 to this point in the season, would he be over 20 homers and over 10 steals with pretty similar numbers the rest of the way? Probably. I feel comfortable saying probably, or at least somewhat comfortable. Didn't sound all that comfortable, but probably. 4,100, 2,900 for multi-position Tommy Edman. Down to a 93 WRC+, plus, but a talented guy, 12 homers, 24 steals. Playable part at worst. Mason Wynn hasn't really done much in 80 plate appearances so far, but a kid that they believe will hit a little bit at this level, steal some bases. 7 WRC+, plus. Not great. You know how fast you were going? Couldn't have been more than 70. 7 miles an hour. Black Sheep. Taking him back to Colorado where he's wanted for banging horses. Funny movie. Not Tommy Boy, though. Tommy Boy is peak. That's another one that's on in the cable rotation this month. Seen Tommy Boy 2 or 3 times this month. Just had it on. Mamba, yeah. Kana was in that sequence. I like the idea of Kana hitting and getting on base ahead of Rowdy Tellez. If we're homer hunting with Rowdy Tellez, I like the idea of taking the guy who's got a 360 plus on base percentage who hits immediately ahead of him in the lineup. Just take that as a little pairing at the bottom. And then it was Yelich and Contreras up at the top. Although if you don't need the catcher, you could obviously... Contreras has been like their second best hitter overall for the season, their best run creator. So I would include him even if I'm on FanDuel. But I think you could go like, Yelich Adames or whatever version of that. But yes, Kana was in that stack, Mama. Trey, definitely. Trey likes the Cubs, fate targetable. Absolutely. Cubbies ranked at the top of the board today. Cubbies number 1 for projections, 2 for FanDuel value, 4 for DK value, 8 for home run upside against Brandon Fate. So this one, Phillies are there. Cardinals are there. Phillies bats. Aaron Nola. Zach Thompson. Cardinals bats. I'm going to give Nola a little bit of faith. That said, he's not a high priority. He's just kind of on the board, given where he's priced for the projection, for the comparative value. 4-prong says on a large slate is a 5-3 stack the best or 4-4-3-3, 4-4-3-3-2. I prefer going full, especially on a more complete slate, because the idea there is we're just trying to capture two teams that fully go off. On a limited slate, say it's a 5-gamer, you've got 10 teams to work with, odds that 2 of them completely explode versus one of them explodes for a big total and you want 4 guys or 5 guys from that team, but then there's a couple of guys with the same score on 6 of the other 10 teams. On a slate with 26 teams involved, you've got a much better chance that 2 of them just go nuclear and you just want 5 guys from one and 3 guys from the other, rather than, okay, I had 5 guys from that team, but then I took 1 from this one and 2 from that one and it was fine. Not saying that can't happen. Obviously it can. And obviously it all also comes down to price and how those things, the combinatronics of the thing. But yeah, I tend to prefer full stacks for slates like this. But, full and then short by 1 man and a one-off is always viable as well. I don't think that it's all that different. If you looked at the results, it's probably relatively even. I don't have any kind of history to look through or numbers to put on it for you. But just the nature of the beast. That's how I approach it. Who do we get in that Red Sox lineup for Casas? I forgot to check. So the Red Sox, ooh, that's interesting. All right, real quick, going back to that Red Sox game, they Tristan Casas scratched, so they put Ceddanne Rafaela in the leadoff spot, their premium rookie. That's a really interesting bat going up against Jose Barrios from the leadoff spot now. He's hitting ahead of Rafael Devers, Justin Turner, Alex Verdugo sliding down to 4th, Yoshida 5th, Willie Abreu, Trevor Story, Reese McGuire, Luis Urias. So interesting spot for Ceddanne Rafaela at the top of the board. He is 3.1K outfield and shortstop eligible on DraftKings. That's dynamite. On FanDuel, he's 2.6, third base. I prefer him on DK. Outfield and shortstop eligibility. That's very, very interesting. It is a positional conflict with Story because you don't have the multi-position on Story, so maybe you just stick him in the outfield. On FanDuel, you don't have any conflict at all. It doesn't really matter. Interesting hitter, though, at the top of that Red Sox lineup now. I don't love the idea of Verdugo cleanup. I might have gone Rafaela Verdugo, Justin Turner, Rafael Devers, and let Devers hit 4th. Or maybe move Story up and leave Devers 2nd. But whatever. Functional. Let's keep on rolling. Coors Field, Logan Webb. We talked about this situation yesterday. Logan Webb is a... Let me grab these lineups. Logan Webb's a dynamite option. Going up against the worst team in baseball, full stop. He is tons and tons of upside. He's the league leader for innings pitched, as we looked at yesterday, even though the guy immediately behind him has made 1 fewer start. He's several innings out ahead of guys who have made a comparable number of starts. 193 innings in 30 starts this season, 23.2% strikeout rate, perfectly serviceable, a microscopic 3.8% walk rate. Speaking of microscopic, 1.4 degree average launch angle, keeps the ball in the yard like crazy. 45.8% hard hits, 91 miles an hour of exit velo. Could be problematic if the ball gets through the infield, if they get it a little bit above the infielders' heads. But on the launch angle, I'll take my chances with Logan Webb. 2.62% home run rate allowed, 3.40 ERA, and a 2.99 xFIP on the season. Dynamite. Excellent option, even at Coors Field against this lousy Rockies club. Chase Anderson, not so much. You can see that he barely cracks 10 in the FanDuel scoring, 5,000 on DK, 6,200. Just leave him on the board. 6.49 ERA, 5.61 home run rate. Feeds the upside for the Giants. I do think the Giants are on the board like we talked about earlier. There's definitely some home run upside coming through. Yaz above the magic number at 11. Tyler Estrada, J.D. Davis, Michael Conforto, all pushing the magic number. And then Lamont Wade and Mitch Haniger right in the middle there at 7.47, 7.29 for home run upside. A lot of power in this lineup. No Jock Peterson, kind of sucks, but a lot of power. Some interesting left-handed bats. Some interesting options for Coors Field. They're not priced up really for being at Coors. Easy enough to get to. So you take some shares of Yaz, who's got 14 on the season with a 228 ISO. Tyro, 12 home runs, 21 steals. His price is 38 on FanDuel, is a little high, 5,000 on DK, but at least it's at Coors Field, and you can average him down with the rest of these guys. He should be a little less expensive, only a 103 WRC+. Him and what's his face? Nico, who we'll probably talk about in a minute. I haven't looked at his prices yet, but Estrada and Nico, both a little bit high priced for what they do. J.D. Davis, 42-34, 18 homers on the season, a 106 WRC+, plus, down to a 171 ISO. Lost a little bit of his premium contact year over year. Was looking like a breakout early in the season. Now at least he's fairly priced. Good position in the lineup at Coors Field. Good opportunity for J.D. Davis and a nice mark in the home run model. Conforto, 15 homers on the season, a 154 ISO, 107 WRC plus in 426. Triple slash is okay. Conforto's better than this overall, or I think he's better than that anyway. The old version was. Went through some obviously injuries, missed a ton of time. Not a bad season coming back, but I was expecting a little bit more. But 3,400 for that hitter hitting cleanup today in the middle of the lineup at Coors Field. Yes, please. Lamont Wade, very good on base skills, 374 on base, 14.4% walks, only 18.8% strikeouts. Hits the ball fairly hard, 14 home runs. Definitely an interesting player at Coors Field for a cheap price. Mitch, 6 home runs on the season in 202 plate appearances, 39 2 years ago when he was last fully healthy, as everybody's heard me say before. 4,300, 3,300, cheap. Making pretty good contact when he connects. 10.7% barrels, 45.8% hard hits. The home run total is a little low. The triple slash is obviously very low, but when he's connecting, he's connecting. Pat Bailey, arguably the same thing, 11% barrels, 40.3% hard hits. He had the 7 quick home runs when he first came up. He's more here for his defense, but he's put up respectable enough numbers at the plate as a catcher. Brandon Crawford, Luis Matos, kind of mix and match options. If you're rostering Rockies against Logan Webb, I don't think it's a great opportunity given how he checks power, given what the run total looks like in this one, given all the very low home run marks. But if you do go there, I think you want Charlie Blackmon and Nolan Jones off the top, as well as Chris Bryant. Even though Bryant hasn't been really good in his 288 plate appearances, 10 home runs, a 146 ISO, 91 WRC+. plus. Blackmon at least gets on base at a pretty good clip. Doesn't hit for much power anymore, but gets on base. Nolan Jones has power, has a little bit of speed, good on base, good run creation mark. These are your 3 priority guys. And then Eleuders Montero, cleanup, pretty interesting, 3,600, 2,900. But you're looking to him for right-handed power, and Logan Webb really doesn't give up all that much power. So yes, if you're going to Rocky stacks, but not a guy to make, to go out of your way for Rockies just because he's there. Ryan McMahon, 51-34, good lefty power bat, 2,300 when he's facing a righty. He's fine, mix and match option at worst, with a upside beyond that against Logan Webb. If you're stacking Rockies, but I'm not saying, hey, I'm missing 5 shares of Ryan McMahon. Let me build 5 Rocky stacks. Not saying that for him as a one-off either. Not against this pitcher. Elias Diaz, mix and match option at catchers. Productive season. Ezequiel Tovar, productive enough in the counting stats. 15 homers, 10 steals, but only a 71 WRC+. plus. Brendan Rodgers only 34, and Brenton Doyle 35 WRC+, plus in 122 and 367 plate appearances. Rodgers is a better player than this. I don't necessarily know that Brenton Doyle is. Logan Webb, Giants bats. Rockies bats way down here. No Chase Anderson. Tigers and the Angels. I do think there's upside for Tariq Skubal in this one. Angels, no Shohei Ohtani, no Mike Trout, no stars, no talent. A little bit of talent. 22.9% strikeout rate collectively for that lineup. A lot of mid-20s targets in there, going into the 30s when you get down the bottom toward Moniak, Chad Wallach. Definitely some strikeout targets for Tariq Skubal, who's been good this year. 30.2% strikeout rate, a 3.47 ERA with a 2.69 xFIP, only a 5.2% walk rate. 62 and a third in 12 starts, not giving up any power. Pretty good projection for the 9,000, 9,800. Don't dislike Tariq Skubal at all in this spot. Last time out, 9 strikeouts, only 1 walk, 2 hits, 5 clean innings against the White Sox. 7 strikeouts, 2 earned on 5 hits in 7 against the White Sox at Chicago. 9 strikeouts, 2 homers, and 2 earned runs against the Yanks in 6. Faced the Cubbies, struck out 7. He's only allowed 3 home runs in his 12 starts this year. Been very, very good. 2 of those came against the Yankees. He's been very, very good this year. I think he's one of the higher ceiling guys on the slate. Upside to 9, 10 strikeouts. For the money, he's an excellent option here. I don't know how much I would stack the Angels against him. given that he's not really giving up power, given that most of their best hitters are not at the ballpark tonight. Logan O'Hoppe, kind of interesting. He does crack the magic number for home run upside. 10 homers on the season in 142, 267 ISO. Pretty good premium contact. He's very cheap at catcher. Maybe you one-off some Logan O'Hoppe in lineups where you're not rostering Tariq Skubal. Hope that you can find that home run. Angel stacks, though, I don't really want to get all that invested in. Nolan Chaniel's been terrific off the top for getting himself to first base, 409 on base percentage in 93 plate appearances. Hasn't done much in terms of any kind of power, 5% better than average creating runs. Not really driving the ball, a .013 ISO, a 1.6% barrel rate, 26.6% hard hits. But there's no arguing with the ability to get to first base. Zach Neto, 309 on base, 8 home runs, 233, 309, 394, 92 WRC plus. Mix and match shortstop on both sites for 2,800. Brendan Drury, 42-29, cheap enough. Second base on DK, first and second on FanDuel. 21 home runs against a pitcher who's not really allowing home runs. Randall Grichuk, 14 home runs from the right side. 99 WRC plus, 188 ISO. Capable veteran bat, 2,800, 2,900. He's very cheap. Eduardo Escobar, capable switch hitter, 24-23. Has not done anything at the plate this year. 72 WRC plus, a 131 ISO. 6 home runs. It's been ugly this year. Moniak stands out just because of that price, $3,900, one of the more expensive bats. Still very cheap on DK, don't get me wrong, relative pricing. But that stands out a little bit. He's only 28 on the FanDuel slate. Everybody on this team below 3,000 on FanDuel. 13 home runs, 280, 307, 490, 112 WRC plus. Has been one of their better players when he's been on the field. They're kind of managing the plate appearances, trying to put him in spots to succeed, but he's been delivering 12.4% barrels. An interesting enough bat late in the lineup, but tons and tons of strikeouts for Skubal. Doesn't really walk. Seems like he's going to feed more strikeouts to Skubal than he'll threaten him more, but an 8.82, not nothing in the home run model. Chad Wallach, David Fletcher, mix and match parts at best at the bottom of the lineup. On the Tigers end, going up against Griff Canning, I think you can get to Griff here as well. Doesn't project out quite as well as I might have expected, but 8,200, very, very fair price for him on DK in this matchup. 9,000, same story on FanDuel. I don't dislike the option at all. He's got a 26% strikeout rate this season. That's up from 22.4 when we saw him last in 62 and 2/3 and 13 starts 2 years ago. It's a pretty nice jump. And he spiked a few big strikeout games. 9 strikeouts with an earned run on 5 hits in 7 innings versus the Mets 3 starts back. 7 strikeouts in 6 innings, 2 earned, one home run against Oakland, at Oakland before that, or after that. Only 3 strikeouts last time out, 3 earned. That was against Cleveland, low strikeout group. Probably forgive that a little bit, particularly when he's going up against the Tigers, who have been mostly inept at the plate this year. Do have a 24.5% strikeout rate for the projected version of the lineup. Most of their key hitters strike out a fair amount of the time. I like the upside for Griff Canning here. Good pitcher, not a great pitcher. 4.34 ERA, 3.74 xFIP. Giving up a little bit too much in terms of power. 4.11% home run rate on 9.4% barrels. Elevated angles, a lot of launch, a lot of hard hits. Maybe they get him for power. You do have decent power marks for Kerry Carpenter, Spencer Torkelson. They're 2 good hitters. Jake Rogers, an okay power bat as a cheap catcher late in the lineup. There's playable parts on the Detroit side. I wouldn't, as much as I would take any stack of a couple Angels, I might take a couple stacks of Tigers. Actually, probably prefer the Tiger side, stacks-wise, just for the power that Canning's allowed. And I just think Skubal's the better of the 2 pitchers, strikes out a few more. So, Veerling off the top, 9 homers, 99 WRC plus. Most of his damage is coming against righties. Not a great player, 41.5% hard hits. Doesn't strike out a ton. If he's putting the ball in play for 2,700 on FanDuel, 39 on DK with third base and outfield eligibility, he's all right. Not a high priority. McKinstry from the left side, 3,800, 2,500. Cheap multi-position guy. 8 homers, 16 steals, only an 81 WRC plus. Again, not great. Good spot in the lineup if he's hitting ahead of Torkelson and Carpenter. That's about it, though. Those are your 2 priority bats for sure. They're both cheap on DK. 47, 46. Those 2 hitters should be more expensive than that by now. 34, 29 on FanDuel. They're close to caught up on Torkelson. They're not really caught up on Kerry Carpenter. Kerry Carpenter over 393 plate appearances this year. 290, 349, 504. A 214 ISO, a 132 WRC plus with 20 homers. 10.2% barrels, 43.6% hard hits. That guy cost $2,900. Why? 4,600? Why? Doesn't make sense. Torque, 14.5% barrels, 51.4% hard hits, 28 homers, 215 ISO, 109 WRC plus. I keep on having to push the threshold because he keeps 28. We're going to get to 30 at this point. Miggy, 2,400, 2,100. Couple weeks left in the career. Do you want to roster him one last time to say goodbye? Now might be the night to do it. 3 home runs on the season. Most of his damage has come against lefties. He's very, very cheap. He's hitting in the middle of the lineup. Parker Meadows, 3,000, 2,700, 1 home run, 194, 306, 292, 67 WRC plus in 85 fairly disappointing plate appearances. Javi Baez, bottom of the lineup. Bet the Tigers wish he was retiring at the end of the year. Akil Baddoo, 3,300, 2,700, probably more interesting than Baez at this point. Has more home runs and fewer plate appearances, has the same amount of stolen bases. 30 percentage points better than Baez for run creation and fewer plate appearances, while still being 14% worse than average creating runs. It's been bad down here. Baez is so bad. Jake Rogers is interesting. 12% barrels, 45.8% hard hits, 16 homers, a 199 ISO for a $3,200 catcher. If you're just home run hunting against Canning, that's not the worst play in the world. Tariq Skubal, Griff Canning, Tigers bats, Angels bats. I think you can play any 4 corners of it. I prefer the pitching, and I greatly prefer the Tigers bats to the Angels bats. Tigers are the value stack from Mamba tonight. I am with you there. I think there's upside there. Gun, what's up, Gun? Y'all saving some money in the lobby for me tonight, or should I unregister? I got 1 in tonight, Gun. Mamba has optimal stack rates built into his model as far as tournament size and stack structure. Yeah, I'd be interested in that. Anytime you want to drop it into the Discord, bud, or just DM me if you want to send it and keep it private. 2 home run money for Carpenter. Love it. Arcathelza, that's a good question. The real question there is, when was the last time Javi Baez was really good? Last year, 88 WRC plus, 17 homers and 590 plate appearances. 238, 278, 393. I'd say that probably started the downswing. 547 plate appearances the year before. He was 17% better than average creating runs, had a 229 ISO, hit 31 home runs, stole 18 bases, struck out 33.6% of the time, but was good, was a positive contributor. He might just not like Detroit, man. I don't know. That was the split season. Obviously, he was good with the Cubbies. I don't know. That'll be next year will be his age 31 season. He turns 31 on December 1st. So, yes, there is potential for him to turn it around, but 2 pretty disinterested seasons in a row here in Detroit. And it could absolutely be the situation. I think it would probably be best for everybody if they exit him from Detroit this offseason. So, yeah, if he lands on, a productive, frisky team, let's say he ends up playing shortstop for the Cardinals next year. Or obviously like the Dodgers or somebody like that. I could see a turnaround for sure. I don't think he's lost his talent. I just think he doesn't give a shit in this lineup. Collecting his paycheck, Let's move it on from here. A couple games left to go. What do we got? 3 left? Yep. Pods, Cubbies, and the Dodgers. Pods, Seth Lugo on the mound. Good spot for Lugo. 9,500, 8,600. Cheap enough on both sites. Really like the price on DK at 86. 22.8% strikeout rate on the season. A 3.80 ERA, 3.75 xFIP is who he is on the surface. Giving up a little bit in terms of premium contact. Hard hits are a little high. Exit velo is higher than we want. Barrels are a little higher than we want. Primarily keeping it down. As long as we're below 10 in the launch angle, we're basically okay. Some incidental power with a 3.06% home run rate. Not like amazing at keeping the ball on the yard, but certainly not getting crushed for power by any means. And pitching well, pitching pretty effectively, 125 2/3, 23 starts on the season. Last time out, only 2 strikeouts, 3 walks, 6 earned runs on 7 hits at Houston. Forgivable. 4 1/3 innings. 4 strikeouts, 3 hits, 0 earned runs in 6 against San Francisco. 6 strikeouts, 2 earned, 1 home run in 6 at St. Louis. Had a pair of clean starts against Miami and Arizona over 6 innings with 4 strikeouts, 9 strikeouts. So the Ks bounce up and down. He's around a little bit above league average for Ks, but, around an average strikeout pitcher. But the ability to pitch 6, hit the bonus, going up against one of the worst teams in baseball. I like the opportunity for Lugo. We have talked a few times recently about the power that lurks in this A's lineup now. There are interesting barrel rates and interesting hard hit rates for a number of these guys. That's 5 hitters in a row with an average barrel rate of 12.7%, an average hard hit rate of 43.3%. That's 5 interesting options. If we leave out Lawrence Butler's small sample, it's 12.6% barrels and 44.9% hard hits. Very interesting options here. I think you can both sides this against Lugo, since he has been giving up a little bit of power, since he isn't a major knock-em-dead strikeout guy. A little bit of bat on ball can go a long way for a team like the A's. They're very, very cheap. Zach Geloff, 4,900, 3,400 as the most expensive hitter on both sites. 11 homers, 10 steals, 134 WRC plus with a 252 ISO. Paying a bit of a tax for what he's done so far, but I think there's potential, and I think he's around as talented as we've seen. So I'm not worried about the pricing, and it's not egregious on DK. It's fair on FanDuel, especially when you're getting Noda for only 3,000 on both sites. 47.9% hard hits, 13.7% barrels. Strikes out a ton, but walks a ton. 16% walk rate. 378 on base. Their best option for getting on base, providing a little bit of correlated scoring, helping sequence, helping extend an inning, create runs. He's got 15 homers, a 191 ISO, creating runs 32% better than average. Seth Brown, a hitter that I like a lot from the left side, 2,900, 2,600. 13 home runs in 339 plate appearances, a 193 ISO. Premium contact for days, a lot of strikeouts. Same for Shea Langoliers, premium contact, a lot of strikeouts. Cheap catcher though, 2,800, 27 on FanDuel, 19 home runs. We're just home run hunting with this team. There's a little bit of potential there. Not the most consistent guy in the world, 268 on base, 205 average, not doing anybody any favors there. 16% worse than average creating runs. But as a last man in a stack that starts up here, I don't mind him. I don't mind Lawrence Butler in that role either. 2,100 on site to site. 13.1% barrels, 4 home runs in his 84 plate appearances. I don't really care about the rest of it. 210, 238, 383, not appealing. 69 WRC plus, not appealing. This contact is appealing at that price. Jordan Diaz, Nick Allen, mix and match plays. Diaz, an 89 WRC plus, does have 10 homers in 261 plate appearances. Pretty good hard hit rate of his own down lineup. 158 ISO. Not nothing over 261 plate appearances. Nick Allen mostly here for defense. Tyler Soderstrom is interesting though. Hasn't really done much in his 109 plate appearances. He does have 3 home runs. Only a 100 ISO at 39 WRC plus. Hasn't really made tremendous contact in the show yet. But 2,200 catcher and first base. 2,200 catcher only on FanDuel, but who cares? I think that's kind of interesting for Tyler Soderstrom. A kid who is their top overall prospect. A kid they expect to be a good hitting catcher. Not uninteresting late in the lineup if he's there. Obviously picks up value if he hits like up here. But you got to keep your eye on in the confirmed version of their lineup, which just dropped. And he's not in. That sucks. Okay, confirmed version of the lineup is a little bit different. So let's jump back in here. That's annoying. So you do get Brent Rooker dropped into the lineup. All the things I just said are true about the double-digit barrels and double-digit hard hits. You actually get a better version of the lineup outside of that Soderstrom thing because we don't have Tony Kemp in the leadoff spot. Now we have Noda, the guy who actually should lead off for this team, and his previously mentioned 378 on base percentage and 16% walk rate. Him in the leadoff spot is super interesting now. He's been creating runs really well all season. Hitting immediately ahead of Geloff now makes him more valuable. He's very cheap, easy to get to. Brent Rooker, 3,200, 2,900, 24 home runs, 222 ISO, 118 WRC plus. Now that he's back to being cheap, we've talked about it before, we can absolutely play this premium contact. He doesn't have to be the guy that was hitting a home run every day and looked like Babe Ruth for about a 2-week period early in the season that inclined a bunch of other sites to jump on board and say, oh my God, he's the best player ever. We knew he wasn't that guy. He dramatically cooled off, became who he is, but this is maintained over 472 plate appearances now. You're just paying a good, fair price for premium contact, for the idea of some home runs against a guy who's given up a little bit of premium contact. Brown, we talked about. Love the spot for him. Shea Langoliers, we talked about. Interesting enough catcher, backup cheap catcher power. Or not backup. He's their main catcher, 448 plate appearances. Talent-wise, and price-wise, he's like a backup catcher. But does have 19 home runs. One of the better power-hitting catchers around. Diaz, Butler. So Butler down to 7th in the lineup. Still interesting for the premium contact, the cheapo lefty bat. And then Nick Allen, Esteury Ruiz. Ruiz, as a wraparound play, not ideal because he doesn't get on base. The speed is obviously great, 58 stolen bases, but only creating runs 18% worse than average, doesn't really get on base. Not an ideal wraparound play, but maybe a playable one if you're building a lot of athletic stacks. But 1 through 5, I really kind of like. It's an interesting value spot. I do like Lugo way better, don't get me wrong, but they're not unplayable given all this premium contact. Padres, much more playable. Stars in the top 4 out of the 5 top spots and like a solid B plus in the top spot. 4,900, 3,200 for Ha-Seong Kim. 17 home runs, 35 stolen bases, a 118 WRC plus. One of the better run creators in the infield for his role in the leadoff spot. 358 on base is terrific. Hitting ahead of Fernando Tatis, Juan Soto, Manny Machado, Xander Bogaerts. It's just a prime spot for run creation. And it fits his skill set perfectly. 19.6% strikeouts, 11.9% walk rate. Triple position eligibility for cheap on FanDuel. Dual on DK for less than 5,000. I'll take it. These two guys are stars, priced fairly appropriately. They finally got Juan Soto correctly priced ahead of Fernando Tatis on the FanDuel slate. Still 100 less on the DK slate, but closing in. 30 home runs to 24, 8 stolen bases to 25, 148 WRC plus to a 116. Separates by the on-base percentage by a dramatic amount, 399 versus 323. Juan Soto, 19.2% strikeouts, 18.5% walks. Outrageous hitter with a 12.8% barrel rate and 55% hard hits. These two guys are stars, premium options in stacks of Padres. Super high priority bats if you're going to the pods. Manny Machado, 5,000, 3,500 up to 28 home runs, a 206 ISO, 113 WRC plus. Kind of pulled this season together. The triple slash is still a little disappointing. Xander, 272 in the average, 341 on base, 423 slug, 18 homers, 15 steals, 14% better than average creating runs. Can't really argue with the production, even though the triple slash isn't exactly where we want it. 4,600, 30,000, cheap. For that talent, for the guy that we know that Xander Bogaerts is, that's cheap. Campusano's been good, 3,200, 2,700. Pretty solid numbers filling in for Gary. 6 home runs, a 128 WRC plus, and a kid that they think is going to hit. Garrett Cooper, 2,600, 2,600 across sites, 15 homers. Most of them came with Miami, but he's okay. Batten has been moderately productive, a 113 WRC plus and 80 plate appearances. And then Jose Alzocar, kind of a mix and match part, 66 WRC plus and 69 plate appearances. Your priority bats are here. Kind of straightforward, but some very good talent. They're going up against Sean Newcomb. Doesn't project well. 5,500, 6,600. Has been a okay pitcher in spots in the past. Has found strikeout games in the past. Was gone for quite a while. Came back. Couple relief appearances. Then came back to the starting rotation. Went 4, struck out 5, 2 walks, 1 hitter against 15 Rangers at Texas the last time out. Probably a similar ceiling. I don't imagine he's going more than 4 or 5 innings here. I would say it's probably not worth doing. It's a tempting dart to throw at 5,500 on the DK slate. Tempting in terms of like, you know, if you're a bit masochistic and you like things that are probably going to fail, but have like a weird ceiling. Maybe. Not good overall. Let's see. Minor leagues. Boy, difficult to find any kind of relevant sample for Newcomb anymore. Hey, chill. 164 innings back in 2018 while with the Braves was probably the high point. 4.33 xFIP and a 3.90 ERA that year, and struck out 23% of hitters at the major league level, 23.7% the year before in 2017. And then it's just been all over the place. Only 2019 through 20 and 2/3 in AAA, 68 and a third in the show. The weird short 2020 season, 13 and 2/3 in the show. Mostly 16 and 2/3 and 32 and a third AAA, the show in 2021. 24 innings, 27 and 2/3 in 22. Not a lot. And then this year only 31 and a third in AAA for San Francisco apparently. Had a 30.5% strikeout rate at AAA this year in that sample. Not a lot to really hang on to, really cling to with the Newcomb play. So, probably wouldn't work out. Probably not worth doing. I definitely think you're taking Padres bats against them either way. So we'll say Seth Lugo, Padres bats, Athletics bats. Cubbies, Diamondbacks. Let's see if we got lineups here. No lineups in yet for this one. So we talked about the Cubs briefly earlier, but just to reiterate, really like the spot for the Cubs. You could probably guess that they're going to be in my one lineup that I made, so no one's stealing it from me. Chris Morel, the home run pick of the day, projected in the leadoff spot, but I like him. I like him here. I like him down here, wherever he lands. Gotta like the spot for Chris Morel. 12.52 in the home run model. Fits 3 positions on FanDuel for 3,700, 2 on DK for 53. 22 homers on the board this year, a 251 ISO. Some of the best bat flips in baseball. Nico, 57.38, pricey. 9 homers, 40 steals. It's good production in terms of the counting stats. 285, 343, 392 is good, but not great. 103 WRC plus, only 3% better than the average player at creating runs ultimately. Does provide some counting stats with the steals. The 9 home runs are a little bit weird output for a guy with a 1.8% barrel rate, 33.5% hard hits. He should just be cheaper. Ian Happ should be more expensive, though. 49.35, 17 homers, 14 steals. 113 WRC plus, gets on at a 358 clip ahead of Cody. Cody, 64.46, appropriately priced for the production this year. 358 on base percentage. He's stolen 20 bases. He's hit 25 home runs in only 492 plate appearances. 139 WRC plus, 229 ISO. Dramatically improved his strikeout rate, which beginning of the season we called that out. If he can not strike out 27% of the time, and he dropped it by 11 percentage points. Dynamite improvement this year. Monster return to form. Only 6.4% barrels, 31.8% hard hits. Another one of those guys who's weird, just gets it done without making frequent premium contact. Imagine if he squared up on the wall a little bit more frequently. Dansby, 20 home runs on the season, 109 WRC plus, a valuable shortstop that tends to go a little bit under-owned. 54.36, not incorrect pricing. Maybe if you look just at this year's triple slash and run creation marks, maybe it seems a little bit high. But given who he's been over the course of his career, Dansby perfectly viable at those prices. Seiya Suzuki, still cheap, 43.35, cheap on DK anyway. 17 homers, 120 WRC plus, 193 ISO. Been kind of rolling lately, kind of pulled his season together late in the year. 47.6% hard hits. Just been hitting for more power, had been pretty good in terms of the triple slash, the run creation marks all year. Just a little bit more pop of late. John Gomes, cheap catcher bat, 3,500, 3,000, 9 homers in 368. Pete Crow Armstrong, 2,624. Hopefully he's in the lineup. Very, very cheap. Interesting playable part. Late in the lineup, was raking in the minor leagues. Hasn't done anything in 8 plate appearances in the show yet, but kid they fully believe in. One of the top overall prospects in baseball. One of the last top prospects left lurking in the minors. We've really depleted the minor leagues of top prospects this season. We've had a ridiculous number of very, very good young players come up this year. It's fun to watch. It's really great for baseball. And there's a whole ton of more talented guys coming up. Never short on premium prospects. That's why these guys are functional just chips when you're playing like Dynasty. I'm always willing to trade my prospects if I've got a go now, win now type situation. It's because you can always replace prospects. No matter what, there will be a top-ranked prospect next year who may or may not work out, and who people will be just as excited about as they were excited about for the guys this season. So the Cubbies, all that talent, we're throwing it against Brandon Fate, who 20.2% strikeout rate on the year, a 5.62 home run rate is problematic. 11.7% barrels, 19.4 degree average launch, so everything's up in the air, everything's been hit hard. 45.3% hard hits, 90 plus miles an hour of exit velo, a 4.90 xFIP under his 6.25 ERA. xFIP's a lot better, but it's still not good. He's supposed to be a good pitcher. He showed flashes through August. He was actually pretty decent through all but one of his August starts. The last one that came against the Dodgers, I think it was on the last day of August. That was a clunker. And then he came out, faced Colorado. Not in Colorado. Faced Colorado in Arizona. 3 earned runs, 4 strikeouts, 6 hits in 3 2/3. Last time out at the Cubbies, this same Cubbies team, but at Chicago, gave up 3 home runs, 4 strikeouts, 4 earned runs. Nothing about that is predictive about this slate necessarily, but a pretty good hitting situation here for the Cubs nonetheless. Don't want to play any Brandon Fate, 6,700, 7,300, even at price. I just don't see it. Maybe he comes back next year, turns a corner. He's a kid they were expecting to be good. Kind of a disappointing year for him, but I don't see it today. I don't think it's a good spot to play today. Justin Steele, 10-1, 11,000. Very good pitcher, good lefty, 2.49 ERA, a 3.40 xFIP, a 5.1% walk rate, 24.5% strikeouts. Doesn't allow very much power at all. 1.69% home runs on very good hard hits and exit velo. Only 5.3% barrels. Sub 10 degree average launch. He's pricey, but easily worth it. Projects out well. He's going up against a team that, the strikeout rate's been going up a little bit. It's up 23.6%. Part of that is Jordan Lawler's 44. We take that out, that came in 18 plate appearances. It dropped back down to 21%, but that's still higher than where they were a little while ago. Against lefties this year, the D-backs, 18.8% strikeout rate collectively for the active roster against lefties. Only a 102 WRC plus though, 163 ISO. On the low end, Geraldo Perdomo down the bottom of the lineup only strikes out 8.8% of the time in the split in 57 plate appearances. But Gurriel in 146 only strikes out 11% of the time. Ketel Marte in 185 is at 11.4. Corbin Carroll in 155 is at 11.6. Lot of ability to limit strikeouts against lefties. Then you drop Tommy Pham, 19.3. Christian Walker, 21.2. Both of those are still good marks. Longo strikes out a lot if he's in the lineup. But, it's interesting on both sides because I could see Justin Steele having a good game against this team, but those are aggressively low strikeout rates against lefties for several of these key bats. Doesn't really lead me to playing the Diamondbacks a lot because we're not going to get that much power out of them, I don't think. But maybe a little bit of a limiting impact on a very expensive pitcher, which is borne through in the projection. If you do want to go to Diamondbacks, I think you prioritize Ketel Marte, Corbin Carroll, Christian Walker, and then just build around them. That's kind of obvious, but it also makes a ton of sense with this team. Those are easily their 3 best players. They've got power across three key positions, second base, an outfielder, and a first baseman in there. Then you get Tommy Pham, who's been very good this year, 16 homers, 20 steals, 20% better than average for runs, hitting for a ton of power. Only costs $38.32 as a second outfielder, and Lourdes Gurriel would be my next priority. So we would technically fill out our outfield if we just wanted to go a 5-man off the top. I think they're worth doing, but it probably makes more sense to spread out at least one of those outfield shares to grab either Longo or Gabe Moreno, or even Jordan Lawler at shortstop for $2,500 as a wraparound option. Kind of interesting. Lawler, one of the top prospects down the bottom of the lineup, 2,500, 2,100 at shortstop. Nothing in 18 plate appearances so far, but good numbers through the minors. Definitely a playable part for very cheap late in their lineup. Longo for 3,000, 2,300 has 11 homers, a 210 ISO, 93 WRC plus, but does strike out a lot. 52.6% hard hits, 11.3% barrels though. These guys have all been good. Excuse me. My inclination would just be to go a 5-man, just straight down the line there. But obviously, you do kind of want to mix up the not have your 3 outfielders. Not that it's a thing, right? It's perfectly fine to have your 3 outfielders from the same team. And if I was building 150 lineups on either site, I would have that stacked quite a few times. Not saying don't do it, but I'm saying if I'm building one lineup, I might want to leave a slot open for an outfielder from another team because there's a lot of priority bats in the outfield. And there is a good catcher on this team. Gabe Moreno, 276, 325, 407, 7 homers, 5 steals. 2% worse than average creating runs in 326 plate appearances, but doesn't strike out that much, connects pretty well, only costs 3,100. Or you could use Longo at third base. So there are other options than just stacking the 3 outfielders in there, is I guess what I'm getting at. Cubbies bats with a bullet. Justin Steele, Diamondbacks bats. No brainer fade. Last game up, which is good because it's 6:20. I don't have lineups to build, so we took our time. We talked about aliens. We talked about life on this planet. Talked about the afterlife. The idea of spooks, specters, ghosts, poltergeists. Have you experienced feelings of dread in your basement or attic? Have you seen a spook, specter, or ghost? We'll call the professionals. Ghostbusters. The commercial goes something like that. It's close. Vic David Figueroa, Paul Skeens gas. What did he do? Is he pitching today? He was my pick. I told you guys. He was my pick in the number 1 overall pick in our minor league dynasty draft for that dynasty league. Mid-season minor league draft, kind of like our rookie draft. Made him the number 1 overall. Could have taken his teammate Cruz, who's been raking in the minors, or at least was as of a couple last time I checked. But I just love the upside for Skeens. Think he could be pitching in the show to start the season next year, and could just hit the ground running. Last game on deck, Bobby Miller, 8,400, 9,100 against the high strikeout Mariners. Not uninteresting. Projects out fairly well. 22% strikeout rate over 101 and 2/3. 3.98 ERA with a 4.01 xFIP. He's been pretty good. 6.7% walk rate, only allowing a 2.39% home runs. Kid that they fully believe in out there, and he's relatively cheap. One of those guys that was just like, for 84, 91 was projected out a little higher than some of the more expensive pitchers on the slate. There's definitely strikeout upside. 24.9% for this projected Mariners lineup. Do we have either of these? We do have the confirmed. So for the Mariners lineup, a 24.9% strikeout rate is probably the exact same one. Jared Kelenic back in that lineup, though, at 32.7% strikeouts. Eugenio Suarez, 30.7. Teoscar, 30.2. Cal Raleigh, 27.4. Even Julio, 24%. That's their best hitters. That is the guys that might succeed here. A lot of strikeouts there for their key hitters. That said, all those guys create runs better than average. All those guys have solid home run totals. Some good, not great home run totals, like 20 for Eugenio in 626. He was at 31 each of the last 2 years in 574 and 629. 25 puts, who's that, Raleigh? Teoscar's 25 ties him with last year's output in 535 in fewer plate appearances. 28 for Cal Raleigh puts him 1 ahead of last year's pace in fewer plate appearances. But we know these guys struggled a little bit to start the season and then kind of all gelled over the second half, especially Julio, obviously. He was really the catalyst, really the key to pulling everything together. 289, 344, 505, 216 ISO, 135 WRC plus, 30 homers, 36 steals. The WRC plus has a chance to finish around where it was last year. Everything else is already in line or better than it was last year. What an amazing turnaround. He's been so good second half. Very good player for 66.45. Worth the money. Everybody else in the stack helps average it down anyway. So I do think you could play some Mariners against Bobby Miller, but I like the spot for Miller going against them. If you're going to Mariners bats, Julio's my top priority, of course. J.P. Crawford's been really good in the leadoff role. Does have a 377 on base. Creating runs 29% better than average. A little bit of power from the left side of his own and correlates directly with all the guys that you want. Raleigh, cheap with all his power at the catcher spot. 13.1% barrels. Teoscar, cheap. 4,500, 3,000. 44, 3,000, 45, 3,000. 42, 29 for these three power hitters is just cheap. $2,900 average on FanDuel and a $4,300 average on DK. And then you get Kelenic here, 33.29. 11 home runs in 367 plate appearances, 12 steals, a 108 WRC plus. Seemed like he was going to have his big breakout. Fell short, got hurt, was out of the lineup, etc., etc. Still 10.8% barrels, pushing nearly a 50% hard hit rate when he's in the lineup. When he connects, He's got power. He's got talent. Ty France in 600 plate appearances, only 10 homers, down by half from the total from last year in 13 more. Disappointing year for Ty France overall, but still capable of putting bat on ball. Gets to first base at an okay clip at 338, creating runs 3% better than average. Not unplayable late in the lineup. Ken Zone for 32.25, 5 home runs, a stolen base, only an 80 WRC plus. Josh Rojas, 3 home runs, 11 steals, only a 78 WRC plus. Mix and match options down the bottom of the lineup. Dodgers side going up against George Kirby. Apparently, as long as he's not pitching in the 7th inning, he should be fine. 6 1/3 last time out, struck out 6, 4 earned runs, 1 home run on 5 hits against Tampa Bay. Famously came out and said he didn't want to pitch in the 7th. 3 strikeouts in 3 innings, 3 earned runs against the Mets. I forget why that one was a short start. Did he come out with... doesn't really matter. 9 strikeouts, 3 earned run, and 5 2/3 in the start before that. I forget why he came out in the short one, but obviously, pitched a full game the last time out. So I think you can go to him here. It's just a terrible matchup. Doesn't really project all that well against the Dodgers. Very talented pitcher. 22.8% strikeouts. A microscopic 2.4% walk rate is phenomenal. 3.48 ERA with a 3.62 xFIP. Doesn't give up many opportunities with only a 1.05 whip. Doesn't give up too much power. But the Dodgers can find their power. 5 guys off the top, below but around the home run mark. Freddie Freeman, the lowest at 6.53. He's got 26 on the season with 18 steals at 238 ISO. He creates runs 66% better than average. Mookie, the closest. He's got 39 on the season, 13 steals, 295 ISO, 174 WRC+. plus. Will Smith, Max Muncy, JD Martinez, priority bats. David Peralta, Jason Hayward, James Outman are 3 cheap lefties in the outfield in this lineup. I like going to, as I've said many times, any combination of 1 or 2 of these guys with any combination of 3 to 5 of these guys, primo spot. Excellent, excellent options. Hayward and Outman both above average for run creation for the full season. 14 homers for Hayward, 19 homers for Outman, 15 steals, a 180 ISO with a 118 WRC+. plus. Hayward beating him for power, 14 homers and fewer plate appearances, a 212 ISO, 125 WRC+. plus. Peralta's been a little bit below average, 88 WRC+, plus, 7 homers, an okay triple slash, but still a cheap lefty bat that I don't mind getting to. 45.6% hard hits. Enough said. Enrique Hernandez, bottom of the lineup, 3,000, 2,300. They've got a few mix and match guys. It could be Miguel Rojas. It could be Ahmed Rosario, but just kind of limited down there. Whoever it is a mix and match play at best. 4 corners of this one probably are playable, but I prefer the bats, I think, on both sides. Prefer probably the Dodgers bats, Mariners bats, Bobby Miller, George Kirby. 4 playable parts, though. With that, gang, coming up on 6:30, one of our longer, later shows. Single entry stack for which one, Vic? Cubbies, the Dodgers, the Mariners? Not sure which one you were asking about. 46 people hanging out 2.5 hours into a 13-game baseball show. We'll wrap things up. Chris Morel was the home run pick of the day. Overall home run board. This can't be everybody. Aha. Somebody was sorting something on here. I think I was looking for a shortstop at one point. Pete Alonso kind of leading the world by a pretty wide margin. 4 points out ahead of the field. Luis Robert, Jordan Alvarez, Chris Morel, the home run pick of the day. Kind of a mixed board, though. Not like, a lot of days we see, there's 5 guys from the same team or 4 guys from the same team. A little bit more mixed up today. A lot of interesting individuals. Less so in terms of stacks, less obvious stacking spots. Padres with 3 guys above the magic number, I think, are the lead group overall there. Mets get Lindor and Alonso. Cubbies only get Morel, but several guys I think were right around it. They had a few guys in like the 7s and the 8s. Interesting power board. Logan O'Hopp's a weird one. A lot of power in that bat. We've seen it briefly. Josh Donaldson, interesting one. Cheap, 2,600 on the FanDuel slate. Forget what he costs on DK. for all his flaws, Josh Donaldson does have some power if he's in the lineup. I don't remember whether he's in the lineup or not. Pitching board, Logan Webb at Colorado. It's going to be an interesting one. He's my pitcher in my one lineup. I'm rolling with it. I do think it's a very realistic projection. I think he's got ceiling beyond that. He could easily go out and pitch 9 innings today against Colorado. They probably won't do that to him considering the ballpark, but 7 innings, 6 good innings is in play. Handful of strikeouts, strikeout beyond his normal upside is in play. It's the worst lineup in baseball. It's also in play that he gets dinged by the ballpark, but it's really only the ballpark he's pitching against. Hunter Green, a lot of believable upside, few strikeouts, but we just saw some good power marks on the other side of that matchup for the Mets. Tariq Skubal, pretty easy version of the Angels lineup should be for him to be able to get through. I like that spot a lot. That's probably my second favorite spot on the pitching slate behind Logan Webb. He'll probably be owned, but I think he's easily worth it. Probably the highest ceiling on the slate for Tariq Skubal. I think that's right. Seth Lugo, good option. Realistically high projection. Fair pricing on both sides, particularly on DK, where he's arguably pretty cheap. Decent ceiling for additional strikeouts, but there is a little bit of power to worry about in that Oakland lineup. Peterson has kind of been mixed for results this year, but he's very, very cheap at $8,000, $6,600 with believable strikeout upside against that Cincinnati team. That said, the guys that are in the actual lineup tonight, while it is a weaker version of their lineup overall, they do have a little bit of skill against left-handed pitching. So he's not necessarily safe, but I think there's a true ceiling on David Peterson for a cheap price. Justin Steele, $11,000, $10,100. Comparatively expensive, but very, very good. Difficult spot against Arizona. We saw those guys who were very, very good at limiting strikeouts against lefties, but he's also a very talented pitcher. John Gray can only be limited by the ability to cut strikeouts that Guardians team has. That said, he's one of my more comfy pitchers on this board for where he projects. 93.81. I think it's a fair price for a talented guy going up against a limited lineup. Bailey Ober facing a bad lineup, but he's been shaky lately. 87.85. Difficult to trust. Aaron Nola at this point, difficult to trust, which is just weird to say. But 10.2, 10.4. If he was priced even in like the low 9s, say I could get him where John Gray's priced, I'd be all over that spot. I just don't love who he's been this season for that money against St. Louis. Bobby Miller, think there's upside there. A little bit of ceiling beyond that projection for sure, given the strikeouts in that Seattle lineup. 91.84, pretty good tournament option for Bobby Miller. I don't know how popular he's going to be, but he's definitely a compelling option at 84 as an SP2, kind of a pay-up mid-range SP2 on DK. Eflin, tons of upside at 10.393 against the Orioles. Very good pitcher. Tough matchup. Griff Canning against the Tigers. This is the one that I was expecting to see a little bit higher. I thought Griff Canning would get into the 30s projection-wise here. 9,000, 8,200. The price is right. The strikeouts have been there for Griff. A lot of potential for him against the Tigers. Thompson, little bit of room for him. 75-62, just with believable strikeout upside. Not an ideal matchup facing the Phillies. Kirby against the Dodgers. Good pitcher, bad spot. Giolito, rough this year. Going up against the Rangers, 87-83. Wouldn't knock me out of my chair to see Lucas Giolito have a good game, but he doesn't project like it. He's facing a very good lineup. Not a good spot. Jack Flaherty, similar situation, 81-72. Has been awful since he's been in Baltimore. Tough to trust. The price is right. For that price, he could have a good game. Wade Miley, no thanks. Christian Javier, tough to trust this current form. This has been the theme of this slate. 85-79, though, against the Royals. There's upside there. Talent-wise, there's upside there. Wouldn't shock me if he had a good game for price. Bayo, same thing. Barrios, same thing, except he's way too expensive on FanDuel, going up a terrible matchup against the Red Sox. 8,800 on DK, way more playable over there. Bottom of the board, no thank you for Sean Newcomb, probably 4 or 5 inning max against the tough Padres lineup. Schulten's fate, Greinke, Chase Anderson, probably not going there. Jake Irvin is not completely off the board, even though he doesn't project well, just given that he's been somewhat interesting lately. 77-64, it's not a good price. It's probably not going to work out. I wouldn't play it. Jake, no, I don't think I would do that with Chase Anderson. Jake Swell's asking if Chase Anderson's viable for a value pitcher. I really don't think so. That's the Giants game. This season, 16.5% strikeouts. Ugly in the ERA. The xFIP, terrible for home runs. A lot of home runs for a guy only giving up 32% hard hits. I'll give him that much. But lots of barrels. The right trajectory for home runs. Last year was better at limiting premium contact, limiting power. Still, 22.3% strikeouts, certainly better than 16.5. But walk the world, 24. It's 24 innings. That's why. 48 innings the year before that, 16.3% strikeouts. So these numbers are kind of all over the place and short sample. When was the last time Chase Anderson was really relevant? Last full season was 139 innings in 2019 in 27 starts. Wasn't really good that year. 4.21 ERA, 5.26 xFIP, 20.9% strikeout rate. Yeah. I find it difficult to imagine a real path to success there. The price is fine. Like you're just throwing a price-based dart there, but I don't think you want to necessarily tangle with this semi-frisky Giants team. A lot of good home run power, some pretty good on-base skills. I don't really see that one. Andrew, best FanDuel cheaper stack. So that's where the value marks on the stacks tool need a little bit of you gotta think it through, because some of them see value just because it's high projections for very good players at like fair prices. Some of them see strong value marks for being actually cheap pricing on players who project well. I think my answer would probably be the Twins. They're projected in the middle of the board at 10th for value on FanDuel, 7th for DK value, 9th for home run upside. And everybody in that lineup was cheap, and everybody in that lineup has multi-position. Not everybody, but a lot of key bats in that lineup have multi-position eligibility. The Cubbies land as one of the top value plays overall on the board, but that's partly because they're projected first overall. So even though there's a couple expensive guys, there are a couple cheap guys in that lineup, depending on who you're looking at, especially if you get like Pete Crow Armstrong hitting late. I think he was 2,400 on the FanDuel slate. So there's cheap bats there, but the best like pure value, probably the Twins, then maybe the Rays, who also draw out a very good FanDuel value score from the 5th overall spot on the board. All the other teams at the top of the board are fairly high priced. The Dodgers, the Astros, the Rangers, the Red Sox, the Padres. A lot of fairly high price guys there. So I think it's Twins. All right, guys. With that, 6:36. Slate's going to start soon. Glad I got my lineup built. Long baseball show. One of the longer shows we've done all year for baseball. It was a fun one to talk through, though. Fun slate. A lot of good chatter. A lot of good talk about sidebars and so on and so forth. But with that, I'm going to wish you all luck. Stay tuned. We'll do some baseball tomorrow. May or may not be a baseball show. We'll see what the slates look like. Definitely going to be a football show within the next, let's say, 24 to 28 hours or so. Not exactly sure what time it's going to land at, but we are doing a football show. And then hopefully next week we get actual regularly scheduled football content on track. Projections are up on the site for week 2. Totally free of charge. Every game, every player. Well, anybody who's relevant anyway. Free projections. Rankings for points and value for every position individually are up on the site as well. Everything's totally free. That's for football. Everything for this slate for baseball is up on the site. Same content it's been. Go check it out. If you got any questions, hit me up in Discord. Follow at rotoscouts on Twitter. Hit the like button here. Subscribe here. That's about it, right? Not much more to remind you guys about. No promos, no sponsors. Bustelo Coffee. Cafe Bustelo Coffee is our big sponsor of the day. Appreciate you too, Jake. Good luck to you too, Todd. You guys rock. You guys make these things happen. I'm going to wish you good luck. Somebody out there go win something tonight. I'll see you tomorrow.